chapter 2882. The three immortal saints to be able to make us three immortal saints attack together. Jian, even if you die, you can rest in peace. The Heavenly Void Palace Master said gently, "Don't waste any more time. Directly attack and kill him." The Heavenly Void Palace Master's voice was extremely cold. "Leave it to me." The black-robed old man smiled. His god body immediately released a ring of flame. This ring of flame emitted an extremely hot and tyrannical aura. It was clearly an extremely powerful sacred treasure. "Go!" Elder Su's right hand gently tapped. This ring of flame instantly expanded. Hong hong! Endless flames madly surged out. The flames burned and swept in all directions, covering the entire void in an instant, causing the entire void to sink into a huge sea of fire. Being in the sea of fire, a scorching power crazily pressed toward Jian Wushuang. A domain-type treasure? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. This flame halo was obviously a domain-type treasure, and judging from its power, it had definitely reached the level of a holy treasure. A domain-type treasure at the level of a sacred treasure was displayed by a genuine immortal saint, and its power was truly shocking. The sea of fire that filled the sky swept out, and its movements were also shocking. The entire world was shaking crazily. However, it must be known that this void was just around the market. Such a huge commotion naturally spread to the market. Immediately, a large number of experts and cultivators in the market city were alarmed. Countless figures flew up and arrived around the market city. They all looked toward this void. That's the aura of the immortal saint is not just one, but three. Three immortal saint. The experts in the city were all shocked. The immortal saint was absolutely invincible in the golden Crow-9 realms. Normally, it was extremely difficult to even see one, but now there were three of them in the void. And very quickly, the identities of these three immortal saints were all recognized. That's the Realm Lord Tian Chu, the Heavenly Void Palace Lord. And the last one is Elder Su from the Star Point Pavilion. What are these three supreme existences doing there? From the position that they are standing at, it doesn't seem like the three of them are fighting each other, but rather they are working together. Yes, the three of them should be working together. And the person they are going to deal with, everyone's gazes instantly turned towards a certain direction. In that direction, a young man dressed in golden robes stood there. The aura emitted by this young man caused everyone present to be extremely shocked. Reverend God. It's actually a reverend God. Three immortal saints came out together just to deal with a reverend God. Is this a joke? Everyone felt their minds go blank. Reverend God and immortal saints were completely worlds apart. Under normal circumstances, if an immortal saint was determined to kill a reverend God, even the extremely powerful and terrifying, unrivaled reverend God would have no chance of escaping. Therefore, it was very easy for the immortal saint to kill a reverend God. He could easily kill him alone. But now, the three immortal saints had come out at the same time, and it was obvious that they were well prepared. They had deliberately set up a restriction, and even took out a domain-type, holy treasure. The experts who saw this scene could not help exclaiming in surprise. Who was this divine master that the three immortal saints had gone to so much trouble to kill? In the center of the void, Jian Wushuang was still standing there indifferently among the comments of many cultivators. He was still in the sea of fire, and the scorching power was still pressing on his body. However, his expression was still very calm. "Jian, aren't you good at domains? And you seem to have a domain-type, holy treasure in your hand. Why don't you take it out?" Elder Su looked at Jian Wushuang with a faint smile, although he said that deep down he was disdainful of Jian Wushuang's domain-type skills. Even if Jian Wushuang did have a domain-type, holy treasure in his hand. The power of a treasure of the same level was completely different from that of a divine master. He was confident that his domain could definitely crush Jian Wushuang. Hearing his words, Jian Wushuang finally smiled and said, "As you wish." As soon as he finished speaking, the scarlet compass on Jian Wushuang's body immediately appeared, and then a vast blood-red river immediately surged out. The blood-red river was also surging, and as soon as it appeared, it crazily swept in all directions. The impact immediately seemed as if alcohol had been added to a raging fire. The power of the surrounding sea of fire suddenly soared, and endless flames surged up and covered the blood-red river, wanting to completely destroy it. "Ha! This domain-type treasure of yours is not weak, but unfortunately, you are too weak to use its power. It's much weaker than my domain," Elder Su said with a laugh. "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang curled his lips, and majestic golden divine power surged from his body. Behind him, a 30,000-meter-tall golden emperor phantom condensed out of thin air. The star power in his body was also directly activated, causing his divine power, aura, to suddenly soar. A layer of dark golden armor also appeared on the surface of his body. 7-star secret skill, divine punishment, and 9 luminary star armor were all used. Originally, the power of the 9-universe bloodlight river, which was driven by Jian Wushuang's own divine power, was indeed not as powerful as the surrounding sea of fire. But now, with the 3 secret skills being used together, the power of Jian Wushuang's divine power immediately increased by dozens of times. The power of the 9-universe bloodlight river also increased sharply. Rumble! The surging blood-red river surged crazily, forming an indestructible steel torrent that spread wildly in all directions. The flames that came in contact with the blood-red torrent were immediately extinguished. The steel torrent swept through everything as easily as breaking dried twigs, forcing the surrounding sea of fire to retreat. In the blink of an eye, the entire vast space was in the middle of the blood river flood. The terrifying pressure contained within the blood river instantly affected Elder Su, Realm Lord Tianchu, and Heavenly Void Palace Lord. This caused the expressions of the 3 immortal saints to sink. How is this possible? Elder Su's face was filled with disbelief. He is only a deity, and he is also a domain-type sacred treasure, like me. However, the domain that I used with my full strength was actually suppressed by his domain. This, Elder Su was completely stunned. The Heavenly Void Palace Master and Realm Lord beside him were also extremely shocked. Chapter 2883. One-on-one battle against the 3 saints outside the void. In the nearby market, countless cultivators were gathered there, focusing their attention on this battle. However, when they saw the scene in front of them, all of them were shocked. Elder Su, the Grand Immortal Saint, used all his strength to activate his domain-type holy treasure, but in the end, he was still no match for the domain-type holy treasure that was activated by the Hierarch. He was completely suppressed by the Hierarch's blood river. How is this possible? How can a divine master's domain be so powerful? Even if the divine master used a domain-type holy treasure, his divine power is still incomparable. Everyone was a little dumbfounded. Everyone was in disbelief. Only Jian Wushuang himself was not surprised to see this scene. 5 years ago, when I was fighting with Realm Lord Tianchu, I could see that although I was not as powerful as the Immortal Saint in terms of divine power, the gap was not too big. Now, 5 years later, I have broken through from a junior great divine master to a senior great divine master, and my divine power has soared again. After using the various secret skills, I will definitely not be weaker than the ordinary Immortal Saint in terms of divine power. I might even be slightly stronger, Jian Wushuang muttered. It was a fact that his divine power was stronger than that of an ordinary immortal saint. In addition to the 9 universes blood light river, his divine power was obviously stronger than that of Elder Su's flame halo. The 9 universes blood light river was personally refined by Brother Mo. It's a top-tier 3rd-grade holy treasure, while the flame halo is only an ordinary 3rd-grade holy treasure. There's a gap of 2 levels, and my divine power is stronger than that of the immortal saint from the Point Star Pavilion. Of course, my domain is more powerful, Jian Wushuang sneered. Now that he had fully activated the 9-universe bloodlight river, Elder Su's flame domain had been completely suppressed. However, that was not all. Jian Wushuang's dark golden armor was covered by a layer of dark golden light. Majestic golden divine power surged and covered the void in front of him, and his sword world also came into effect. Star, armor domain, the prison of punishment, and sword world. 3 more domains, and the 9-universe bloodlight river were perfectly stacked together. In an instant, the power of the blood river that was already extremely powerful increased by another level. Elder Su, Heavenly Oasis Palace Master, and Heavenly Oasis Palace Master were all immortal saints, but under the suppression of this domain, their strength was suppressed to a certain extent. This suppression made them only be able to use less than 80% of their strength. I didn't expect that we immortal saints would actually be suppressed by a divine master domain. The gentle smile on the Heavenly Void Palace Lord's face vanished, replaced by a layer of coldness. Humph, so what if the domain is strong? In any case, there are restrictions around. Since this brat escaped, with us 3 immortal saints acting, does he still have a chance to survive? Realm Lord Tian Chu snorted coldly, his body already moving. Boom! Realm Lord Tian Chu's murderous aura surged like a wild beast. In just an instant, he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. On his right hand, there was a black glove, which was filled with boundless divine power and destructive power. When the 2 powers reached their limits, they gathered together. Bang! Realm Lord Tian Chu struck out with his palm, and the world suddenly shook. A giant hand descended from the sky. The giant hand was pitch black like the hand of the heavenly Tao, and it could destroy the world. It descended to destroy everything. Jian Wushuang was the target of the giant hand. Its power is even stronger than the last time it attacked me. Moreover, its strength is limited by my realm. Jian Wushuang was impressed by the giant hand that fell from the sky, but his hand did not slow down. He poured all his divine power into the Blood Mountain sword in his hand. Cut! With a low shout, the Blood Mountain sword slashed out in anger. It was like a sword that could split the sky. The sword light could split the heaven and earth, let alone a giant hand. Whoosh! The pitch-black giant hand that could destroy heaven and earth was instantly split apart, and endless destructive power spread wildly in all directions. However, as soon as the giant hand was split apart, Jian Wushuang's pupils suddenly shrank because the black-robed Elder Su had already appeared in front of him. When Elder Su appeared, he already had a red-gold long stick in his hand. This long stick was extremely thick and 3 meters long. As Elder Su waved his hands, the red-gold long stick instantly turned into a huge red-gold mountain. It swept toward Jian Wushuang in a mighty manner. A shrill sound of rushing wind was heard. Before the long stick approached, Jian Wushuang had already sensed the terrifying power of the long stick. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. The Blood Mountain sword suddenly swept out and blocked in front of him. Bang! With a loud sound, the terrifying power directly transmitted over, causing Jian Wushuang's arms to go numb. This power is so strong. Jian Wushuang was secretly shocked, but he knew that in terms of the strength of his divine power, his full strength was stronger than that of an ordinary immortal saint. He should be stronger than Elder Su. However, the strength of divine power did not represent everything. His understanding of sword principle and understanding of rules were far inferior to those of the immortal saint, not to mention the secret skill he created. Elder Su waved his long stick, which was bound to be accompanied by his comprehension of rules, the stick principle, and even the absolute arts of the saints. Naturally, Jian Wushuang was not able to resist it. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's figure had already shot back crazily. However, before he completely stopped, a strange figure had already appeared beside him. It was the Heavenly Void Temple Master. The Heavenly Void Temple Master looked very gentle, but he was actually the most insidious of the three. As soon as he appeared, he let out an evil laugh and his body expanded. 4 arms appeared on his body at the same time, each of which held a purple spear tightly. In an instant, whoosh, 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 the purple spear turned into streaks of purple light and stabbed toward Jian Wushuang at an extremely fast speed. Before Jian Wushuang could stand firm, he was caught off guard by the sudden thrust of the spear. However, his reaction was very fast, and the Blood Mountain sword had already met it. Clang, 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 clang. The Blood Mountain sword and the purple spear kept colliding with each other, producing crisp metallic sounds. However, Jian Wushuang was caught off guard and could not keep up with the speed of the purple spear. Chapter 2884. Guiding Sword Essence. I can't block it anymore. Jian Wushuang's face darkened. Clang! A purple spear pierced the Blood Mountain sword, causing it to slightly change its direction. The other purple spear, which pierced out simultaneously, grazed the Blood Mountain sword and suddenly stabbed toward Jian Wushuang's heart. Jian Wushuang could not resist it, but before the purple spear touched his divine body, a purple emperor bell appeared. The purple emperor bell formed a layer of purple energy shield in front of Jian Wushuang. As the purple spear stabbed toward him, the energy shield only lasted for a moment before it cracked. The purple emperor bell is still a top-tier heavenly treasure. Unfortunately, it can't withstand the attack of the immortal saint with the saint treasure. Jian Wushuang frowned. After breaking the energy shield of the purple emperor bell, the purple spear continued to stab at Jian Wushuang. However, because the purple spear had weakened too much, it could not even break the dark golden armor on Jian Wushuang's body. However, Jian Wushuang was still in a terrible situation. It was not easy for him to stabilize his body. When he looked up again, he saw that the World Master, the Temple Master, and Elder Su had surrounded him in a triangle. It's tough for me to fight against 3 immortal saints at once. They didn't use their full strength just now, but am still at an absolute disadvantage. So I can only use that move to fight them. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. A faint sword essence had already risen. This sword essence seemed weak and did not have much power, but it instantly surged into the Blood Mountain sword in Jian Wushuang's hand. There was a supreme sword essence hidden in the Blood Mountain sword. The supreme sword essence was extremely powerful, but now Jian Wushuang had already begun to guide it. Boom! The terrifying sword essence directly exploded in the Blood Mountain sword. The power of this sword essence was not too strong, but it was extraordinary. It was a supreme sword essence that carried a shocking will. The sword essence swept across the world, and all the ants in the world were ants. Jian Wushuang held the Blood Mountain sword tightly and felt the supreme sword essence that burst out from the Blood Mountain sword. He even felt that all the people in the world were subservient to him. At this moment, he was the king of billions of sword principles. World Master Tian Chu, Temple Master Tian Su, and Elder Su, surrounding him, immediately sensed the sword essence. This sword essence, it's so powerful and transcendent. As expected, the sword principal treasure refined by Immortal is the divine sword in this kid's hand. Elder Su's eyes were abnormally hot. The three immortal saints had made reasonable arrangements before they attacked. The Blood Mountain sword in Jian Wushuang's hand was his. Therefore, the more powerful the sword was, the happier he would be. Kill him! Realm Lord Tian, Chu shouted in a low voice. Endless destructive power surged out from his body, but he attacked again. Elder Su and the Heavenly Void Temple Master did not hesitate. They immediately went forward. The three immortal saints attacked again. Boom! This time, both of Realm Lord Tian Chu's hands were filled with black divine power, but both of his hands attacked Jian Wushuang crazily. Elder Su held the golden long stick tightly in his hands. This time, the long stick fell from the sky and smashed toward Jian Wushuang. As for the four arms of the Heavenly Void Temple Master, each of them held a purple spear. The purple spear was like purple lightning shooting toward Jian Wushuang. Although the three immortal saints still had some trump cards that they had not used, their strength as immortal saints had burst out. Their attacks were also extremely terrifying, which made the countless cultivators in the market speechless. However, Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and his supreme sword essence instantly soared. Get lost! Jian Wushuang let out an angry shout and slashed out with the Blood Mountain sword in his hand. This sword carried a shocking power and brought out Jian Wushuang's power and comprehension of sword principle to the fullest. He also guided the supreme sword essence in the Blood Mountain sword to the greatest extent. The sword essence of Blood Mountain sword was too strong. With Jian Wushuang's current ability, he could only guide less than 1,000th of it. But even if it was less than 1,000th of its power, it was enough to increase the power of Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship by more than 10 times. Boom! A huge sword light that blotted out the sky appeared out of thin air. This sword light was extremely resplendent and attracted everyone's attention the moment it appeared. At the same time, everyone could feel the terrifying power contained within this sword light that could destroy everything and tear apart the heavens and earth. This power even caused the eyes of the three immortal saints, who had already unleashed their attacks, to shrink. This power, be careful! Elder Su shouted. In an instant, the three of them switched from attacking to defending. The three of them attacked together, trying to block this earth-shaking sword light. The strength of the immortal saint was not undeserved. Under the combined attack of the three of them, the sword light was finally blocked. However, the power of the sword light was so strong that it still forced the three of them to retreat a long distance, and even made them look a bit embarrassed. The sword essence did not disappoint me. Jian Wushuang looked at all of this with a hint of excitement in his eyes. He knew that the sword essence in the Blood Mountain sword was very powerful. Even if it only guided less than 1,000th of its power, it could still make the power of his swordsmanship soar. He had tried it before, and the power of the swordsmanship had increased by more than 10 times. However, he had never really guided the sword essence to fight with others, and this was the first time. This was the first time he had displayed the power of this sword intent, and its power was indeed shocking. Now that I'm using my full strength, my divine power is slightly stronger than ordinary immortal saints, and with the guidance of sword intent, the power of my sword technique will increase by more than 10 times. Under such a premise, even if my comprehension of the rules, understanding of the sword principle, and even my absolute arts are inferior to immortal saints, it's still enough to fight with immortal saints head-on. Even if it's 1 against 3, I'm not afraid at all. Come on! Jian Wushuang's killing intent surged, and his supreme sword essence swept out in all directions. He faced the three immortal saints alone, with one sword, and did not show any fear at all. Instead, he directly charged out at this moment. The world-shaking and terrifying battle intent from his body made many cultivators in the market who were watching the battle cry out in surprise. It was hard to imagine that a mere divine master could still have such a shocking battle intent when facing the three immortal saints. His battle intent and that unstoppable momentum had even completely suppressed the three immortal saints. Chapter 2885. Fight with all your might, kill. With a roar, Jian Wushuang, who was surging with boundless battle intent, transformed into a sword principal master and charged out with a terrifying aura. Be careful. Don't be careless. This kid is extraordinary. World Master Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su did not dare to be careless in the face of Jian Wushuang, the Divine Master. The three of them had fully displayed their strength. Boom! The palm print, which contained limitless destructive power, struck toward Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang did not even bother to look at the palm print. Instead, he casually slashed out with his sword. Then, after channeling the supreme sword essence in the Blood Mountain sword, the sword's power was shocking, and the palm print was instantly shattered. Is his swordsmanship so powerful? Realm Lord Tian Chu's face darkened. During their fight with Jian Wushuang, both Heavenly Void Temple Master and Elder Su felt tremendous pressure from Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship. Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship was too powerful. Even though his comprehension of the rules, sword principle, and absolute arts were not as good as the three of them when he unleashed his full strength, any of the sword lights that he slashed out were enough to make the three of them pay full attention to it. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's expression changed, and a golden light directly merged into the surrounding void. In an instant, the world changed. An actual scroll, world, appeared out of nowhere in the vast and boundless sky. There were mountains and rivers in the scroll world, as well as 9 towering continents. In addition, an ancient and mysterious aura spread out from the scroll world. Is this mysterious? World Lord Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su frowned. When they saw the scroll world, they had a bad premonition. Jian Wushuang's eyes focused. Buzz, buzz. The surrounding void was transformed in an instant. The original void had disappeared and was replaced by a desolate and boundless open space. There were many divine swords stuck upside down in this open space. There were all kinds of divine swords, and each of them emitted an extremely terrifying aura. However, there were over 100,000 divine swords in this vast empty space. It was obvious that this was a sword tomb, a huge sword tomb. The 1,000 treasures great world, the sword path world, had already been activated. What is this? Realm Lord Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Palace Lord, and Elder Su were all at a loss. An illusion? Realm Lord Tian Chu's expression sank, but he quickly shook his head. No, this isn't an illusion, it's a real space. Seems like the treasure Jian he took out earlier should be an extremely powerful treasure. It can actually change the environment. Elder Su's eyes were burning. In this world, I can clearly sense that the sword Tao in the surroundings is getting stronger. The sword intent emitted by Jian Yi is also much stronger than before. His strength should increase by quite a bit here. We have to be careful. Heavenly Void Temple Master said solemnly. The sword essence in the Blood Mountain sword had been guided. The mountain river map and the 1,000 treasures great world had been displayed. At this moment, Jian Wushuang had indeed gone all out and used all his trump cards. At this moment, his battle strength had also reached its peak. Boom! Jian Wushuang attacked again. In the sword principle world, the power of his swordsmanship soared again. His body was also full of fighting spirit as he fought fiercely with the 3 immortal saints in front of him. under Jian Wushuang's full power, although the three immortal saints, including Realm Lord Tian Chu, Temple Master Tian Su, and Elder Su, joined hands, they could only fight evenly with Jian Wushuang for a short time. Even when Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship really erupted, the three of them had to retreat in a one-on-one situation. This battle was too intense. Around the battlefield, countless cultivators were standing in the marketplace, looking at the battlefield in astonishment. The scene on the battlefield had completely exceeded their imagination. A mere divine master fighting against three immortal saints at the same time. How could he fight against three immortal saints? He's too strong. This divine master is too strong. The three immortal saints, Realm Lord Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su, are only evenly matched with him. If it were a one-on-one fight, none of them would be a match for this divine master. How could there be such a terrifying divine master in this world? And how come we've never heard of such a divine master before? Who is this divine master? What is his name? Countless experts were exclaiming in surprise. At the same time, they were all curious about Jian Wushuang's identity. Jian Wushuang had just come from the Pill Sun's sacred world, so the cultivators in the Dragon Phoenix sacred city hardly knew him. From their conversation, we can hear that this divine master is called Jian Yi. But who is Jian Yi? I don't know. I've never heard of him. But today's battle will definitely shake the world. Right. A divine master is able to fight against three immortal saints at the same time and fight equally. If news of this battle spreads, it will shock the world. Even that young phoenix from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion might not be able to compare to him. The eyes of most of the cultivators in the market were shining. The young phoenix of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was recognized as the #1 genius in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. She was a true genius, and her talent was unparalleled in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. However, now that Jian Wushuang had shown such a terrifying result, everyone was impressed. Naturally, these people began to compare Jian Wushuang with Phoenix. In this competition, they found that although Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the rules and talent was not as good as Phoenix's in terms of fighting strength and ability to challenge opponents of higher levels, he was much more terrifying than Phoenix. A divine master could fight against 3 immortal saints at the same time. How strong would he be when he broke through to the immortal saint level in the future? While countless cultivators in the market were gasping in amazement, the battle between the two sides was getting more and more intense. The 3 immortal saints, including Realm Lord Tianxiu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su, did not hold back anymore. They used all their strength and cooperated with each other. Even so, they still could not gain the upper hand after fighting Jian Wushuang for a long time. They still could not gain the upper hand. This made the 3 of them look a little embarrassed. After all, they were fighting in front of so many people. The 3 immortal saints were fighting against a divine master, and they were bullying the weak. However, they could not defeat him after such a long time, which made the 3 of them feel ashamed. Chapter 2886. Ultimate move. This brat, he's just a divine master. How can he be so hard to deal with? Elder Su's expression was dark. Heavenly Void, Elder Su, create an opportunity for me. I have a move that should be enough to kill him. Realm Lord Tian, Chu said coldly. Elder Su and Heavenly Void Palace Lord's expressions changed. The 2 of them had seen Realm Lord Tian Chu's most decisive move before. That move caused them to be extremely wary. However, it was not easy to execute that move. Nevertheless, this Realm Lord Tian Chu had no other choice. Hence he chose to use that move. Watch me. The eyes of the Heavenly Void Palace Master narrowed as a violet lightning energy suddenly flashed out from his eyes. He still had 4 arms, each holding a purple spear tightly. But at this moment, a vast purple shadow suddenly appeared behind him. This purple shadow looked exactly like Heavenly Void Temple Master, but its size was many times larger. Terrifying divine power gathered in each of Heavenly Void Temple Master's 4 spears. 13 slaughter divine spears. Heavenly Void Temple Master shouted. The 4 spears in his hand turned into 4 purple thunderbolts and shot toward Jian Wushuang crazily. Fast, the 4 purple thunderbolts were too fast. Each of the purple thunderbolts contained terrifying power. Any one of them could quickly kill invincible divine masters, like Marquis of 3 and Black Blood Emperor. However, at this moment, the Heavenly Void Temple Master swung his arm wildly. A total of 14 such purple thunderbolts shot toward Jian Wushuang at the same time. Jian Wushuang was in the Sword Principal World and had channeled the sword essence of Blood Mountain Sword to the maximum. His fighting spirit was overflowing. Seeing the purple thunderbolts shooting toward him, his eyes shone with a bright light. Get lost! With a low shout, Jian Wushuang suddenly slashed out with his sword. The Heavenly Void Temple Master had thrust out 13 spears, but Jian Wushuang had only used 1 sword strike. However, it was this sword strike that swept through everything and destroyed the purple divine thunderbolts crazily. Finally, the crackling of the divine thunderbolts continued. The 13 bolts of purple divine thunder dissipated, and the Heavenly Void Temple Master's body trembled slightly in the void. Jian Wushuang was also sent flying by the impact of the 13 bolts of purple divine thunder. At this moment, a suffocating power suddenly came from the void above him. Jian Wushuang looked up and found that Elder Su had appeared in the void above him at some point in time. His body was suffused with endless golden divine power, and as he held the vast scarlet gold long staff with both hands, the giant golden long stick, which was already as big as a small mountain, suddenly expanded and turned into a giant pillar. Heaven-shaking stick. With a low roar, the enormous golden long stick smashed toward Jian Wushuang from the top down. Rumble! The world trembled. The world seemed unable to withstand the terrifying power contained in the long golden stick and began to tremble crazily. The Sword Principal World, formed by Jian Wushuang's mountain river map, was also on the verge of collapse. Seeing the towering golden red long stick coming at him, Jian Wushuang's expression changed slightly. The supreme sword essence swept over his body. Under cover of the sword essence, the Blood Mountain sword in his hand seemed to have expanded in size. He also waved his sword and blocked the golden red long stick. Bang! The golden red long stick smashed into the Blood Mountain sword. The terrifying power contained in the long stick completely exploded. Heaven-shaking stick was the most decisive move that this old monster could use. Moreover, this move was purely a crushing force. The power was too strong. Jian Wushuang only felt a massive force on the Blood Mountain sword. In an instant, it was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. His body directly sank as if he was about to fall to the ground. Moreover, he could not control his body when he fell. World Master Tai Chu, it's up to you, Elder Su growled. The Heaven Void Temple Master also looked at Realm Lord Tian Chu. Whether it was the 13 slaughtering spears of the Heavenly Void Temple Master or Elder Su's heaven-exploding cudgel, the purpose of their most potent moves was to sweep away the obstacles and create an opportunity for Realm Lord Tian Chu's most powerful move. Now that the opportunity had been formed, Jian Wushuang's body was on the way down. He had almost no ability to react, and Realm Lord Tian Chu's killer move was ready. Jian Yi, die with my son. A roar suddenly echoed in the world. Realm Lord Tian Chu's body was full of killing intent. As his roar fell, endless and pure black divine power surged out. This black divine power resulted from Realm Lord Tian Chu combining his divine power with the destructive rule power he had comprehended. At this moment, the black divine power gathered crazily, and in the blink of an eye, it had formed a giant black beast that was 30,000 meters tall. The giant black beast did not have a body, but only a bloody mouth that seemed to devour the world. Under the guidance of Realm Lord Tian Chu, the bloody mouth had already swallowed Jian Wushuang, and in the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang was destroyed. Destruction, crushing plate. Realm Lord Tian Chu's eyes shone with a bright light. The destructive power of the bloody mouth was completely unleashed. Heavenly Void Temple Master and Elder Su stood in the void around the giant black beast. Their eyes flashed with a strange light as they looked at the big black beast in front of them. Jian Wushuang was in the mouth of the giant black beast. No one knew what had happened inside. Heavenly Void Temple Master and Elder Su could not see it. They could only hear the laughter of divine power coming from the bloody mouth. However, both the Master of Heavenly Void Temple and Elder Su had absolute confidence in the move of the Realm Lord. This move was the most decisive move of the Realm Lord, and he did not create it. Instead, it was a powerful secret skill that he had obtained by chance many years ago. The Realm Lord had once used this personal skill in front of everyone. It was the same scene. However, the black beast had swallowed a genuine immortal saint. As a result, the immortal saint was swallowed by the black beast and never came out. In other words, Realm Lord Tian Chu had used this move to kill an immortal saint in front of others. Jian Wushuang was only a divine master, so they did not think he could survive the black beast. The voice of the black beast finally calmed down. Then the black beast turned into a large amount of black divine power and slowly dissipated in the world. When all the news was released and the void was revealed again, there was no human figure. Chapter 2887. The window paper was broken. There was no human figure in the empty shadow. What was left was a divine sword, a piece of armor, and an interspatial ring. The divine sword was naturally the Blood Mountain sword. The armor was the gold-colored battle record. The interspatial ring, of course, was Jian Wushuang's interspatial ring. Seeing this, Realm Lord Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su all smiled. The countless cultivators watching the battle in the market sighed. Secretly, he's dead. Although he showed shocking techniques, he still died in the end. There's no other way. No matter what, he's only a divine master. It's incredible that he can do this. After all, there were 3 immortal saints who surrounded and killed him. Moreover, these 3 immortal saints have clearly used their strongest techniques without holding back. Although he is dead, Jian Yi is still famous in the Golden Crow 9 realms. Many cultivators were talking about Jian Wushuang, but all of them had high respect for him. They admired him for his strength. But at this moment, no, a peak great divine master in the market suddenly frowned and said, Jian Yi is dead, but why didn't he put away the treasure that could change the world? Why did it always exist? The doubts of this peak great divine master were soon noticed by everyone. Not only them, on the battlefield, Realm Lord Tian Chu, Temple Master Tian Su, and Elder Su also frowned slightly. They also noticed it. Above them, the lifelike scroll world was still there. The huge sword tomb and the sword principal world were still surrounding them. Even the domain that had been released from Jian Wushuang's body was still suppressing them. However, it was Jian Wushuang who had used all these techniques. If Jian Wushuang really died, then his techniques would stop immediately without anyone controlling them. But now, could it be? Elder Su's pupils suddenly shrank. In the next moment, they saw endless divine power began to condense crazily beside the blood mountain sword in the empty void. The divine power was too vast and boundless. It made the three immortal saints, World Master Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su, feel inferior. As the divine power gathered crazily, a figure slowly formed in the blink of an eye. This figure was Jian Wushuang. Divine power recombination, World Master Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su, the three immortal saints, instantly widened their eyes, and their scalps seemed to be about to explode. As immortal saints, they knew what was happening. It was because they knew that they were shocked and did not dare to believe it. The countless cultivators in the market were also completely stunned. Countless eyes looking at Jian Wushuang became empty and incredulous. The entire world fell silent at this moment. Dead silence. After a long time, the experienced expert at the peak of the Divine Master realm in the market was the first to speak. Immortal, this is the immortal body. As the words immortal body rang out, the whole world was in an uproar. Realm Lord Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su were also completely stunned. Immortal body. Indeed, Jian Wushuang's divine body had been completely destroyed by Realm Lord Tian Chu's most powerful killing move. Under normal circumstances, he should have been dead. However, Jian Wushuang's divine body had been restored. It was restored. It was an immortal body that only immortal saints possessed. Most importantly, not all immortal saints possessed an immortal body. Realm Lord Tian Chu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su did not have an immortal body. They had not reached the level of forming an immortal body, not to mention the three of them. In the entire Golden Crow 9 realms, there was only one known immortal saint who had an undying body, and that was the Supreme Lord Bone Emperor. Other than the Bone Emperor, the three of them had never heard of anyone possessing an immortal body. The ability of this immortal body made the three of them extremely envious. But now, the power that the three of them had never mastered was used by a divine master. How was this possible? How could the three of them not be shocked? It's the first time I've heard that a divine master has an immortal body. Elder Su said in shock, "My God, what kind of monster are we going to kill? Not only is a divine master so powerful, but he also has an immortal body." Heavenly Void Palace Master was also stunned. As for Realm Master Tian Chu, his face was extremely pale. They knew that Jian Wushuang had an immortal body, but they knew how terrifying it was. It was obviously impossible for them to kill Jian Wushuang with an immortal body. The world was shocked. Everyone was shocked by Jian Wushuang's immortal body. However, while everyone was in shock, no one noticed that Jian Wushuang, whose divine body had reformed, did not open his eyes immediately. Instead, he continued to close his eyes, and there was a hint of surprise at the corner of his mouth. Yes, it was a surprise. When he was in the market, he knew that his comprehension of sword principle had reached a bottleneck. He was only one step away from that bottleneck. He hoped that someone could help him break through this bottleneck, so he was eager to fight. He knew that Realm Lord Tian Chu would certainly be prepared to deal with him, but he did not hesitate to leave the market to face Realm Lord Tian Chu head-on. Even when he learned that the Realm Lord and the other three immortal saints had joined forces, he was not afraid at all. He did not have the slightest intention of retreating. Instead, he used all his strength to fight against the three immortal saints. What was his goal? His goal was that layer of window paper. And now, the three immortal saints were all using their strongest techniques, especially the Realm Lord's strongest technique. It directly shattered his layers of defense, crushing his divine body. He then relied on his divine power to condense his divine body. He was born from death. His window was finally broken. Sword principle. Jian Wushuang was extremely excited. At this moment, in the sword world that was opened up in his body for 100,000 miles. This vast sword world was originally a desolate place without any substance or life. However, at this moment, in the center of the sword world, a sapling had already taken root and sprouted. Chapter 2888. Breakthrough, second level of sword principle. The sword principle was profound and unfathomable. The sword world was only the first level of sword principle, which created a lonely world. The second level of sword principle, the boundless sword tree, was the first living creature born in the sword principle world. Now, the tiny sapling that had taken root and sprouted in Jian Wushuang's world of sword principle was the boundless sword tree. At first, the boundless sword skill was just a sapling, but soon the sapling began to grow at a fantastic speed. In the blink of an eye, the sapling had turned into a small tree and gradually grew toward the towering tree. Then, all kinds of forks appeared on the main trunk, and many branches grew out. In just a moment, a towering tree had appeared in Jian Wushuang's sword world, and the tree was still growing crazily. The speed of its growth was too astonishing. The speed of the trunk extending and covering was too fast and too dense. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes, but he could see the changes in the sword world. He could see that the big tree in the center of the sword world was growing crazily, becoming abnormally thick and tall from an ordinary tree. The height of the tree was also increasing. 30 meters, 300 meters, 300 meters. In an instant, the tree had grown to a height of 30,000 meters, and it was still growing crazily. 15,000 meters, 20,000 meters. After a moment, the boundless sword tree finally stopped. At this moment, the boundless sword tree was already 33,000 meters tall. The towering tree was 33,000 feet tall, and its branches alone were enough to form a vast and boundless forest. However, this was only because of the tree in the center. 33,000 meters. Jian Wushuang felt that the tree had finally grown to its level, and his heart was extremely shocked. He had once obtained the sword principle insight, left behind by a mighty immortal saint. The immortal saint had earlier said that after an ordinary sword principle cultivator reached the second realm of sword principle insight, the boundless sword tree formed in his sword Tao world was only a few hundred feet tall at the beginning. Those who could reach over 1,000 feet were already considered extremely talented in sword Tao, and 33,000 meters was already considered an endpoint in the eyes of the immortal saint. One had to know that many experts who were proficient in sword Tao, including the immortal saint, were able to grow their boundless sword tree to 33,000 meters tall, as their sword Tao comprehension continued to increase. Those who were more talented were able to grow to 66,000 meters tall. Some extremely powerful sword Tao geniuses were said to grow to a height of 99,000 meters. However, such geniuses were already extremely rare. It was said that within the vast third heaven, the immeasurable sword tree of a sword Tao genius could grow to a height of 30,000 meters. However, that was only a rumor. Whether it was true or not, the immortal saint who had left behind his insights did not know. However, it also showed that the boundless sword tree was 33,000 meters tall, which was the limit that many ordinary sword principle cultivators could reach. But what about Jian Wushuang? His boundless sword tree had just taken shape, but it had already reached 33,000 feet tall. But it must be known that he still had infinite room for improvement at this level in the future. The news that the boundless sword tree was 33,000 feet tall in a row would shock the world if it were spread out. The taller and tougher the boundless sword tree was, the more powerful its swordsmanship would be. In the divine beginning world, the immortal saints who were good at sword principle distinguished the comprehension of sword principle from the height of the boundless sword tree. Jian Wushuang's boundless sword tree was now 33,000 meters tall. This meant that even though his comprehension of sword principle was not as good as those top immortal saints, the power of his swordsmanship was not weaker than those immortal saints who had developed the boundless sword tree to its limit and stood at the top was not weaker than those immortal saints. The latter had derived the boundless sword tree to its limit and stood at the top. This was simply incredible. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Jian Wushuang's sword world finally calmed down, and he finally opened his eyes. The surprise on his face grew stronger and stronger. The second level of sword principle, boundless sword tree, is finally here. My boundless sword tree is 33,000 feet tall once it forms a line. This alone is enough to increase the power of my swordsmanship by many times. I wonder how powerful my swordsmanship will be now. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself with a hint of expectation in his heart. He waved his hand slightly, and the Blood Mountain sword, which had been floating quietly beside him, immediately flew toward him. Jian Wushuang held the Blood Mountain sword again and put on the golden armor, so he kept the interspatial ring. When he held the Blood Mountain sword, Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up because he felt that the level of the Blood Mountain sword had increased again. Initially, the Blood Mountain sword was only a top-grade, third-grade, holy treasure, even if it had been merged with his blood essence. It was more terrifying than many second-grade holy treasures because of its sharp edge. However, with his breakthrough in sword principle, the power of the Blood Mountain sword, which was his natal armor, had also increased. So now it was also a second-grade holy treasure. This was a big surprise for Jian Wushuang. The power of the Blood Mountain sword has increased, but the supreme sword essence in the sword has not changed. Previously, with my cultivation in sword principle, the sword essence that I tried my best to guide was less than 1,000th of this supreme sword essence. But now, let's try it. Jian Wushuang immediately began to guide it. The sword essence in the Blood Mountain sword needed the guidance of Jian Wushuang's sword principle. The higher his comprehension of the sword principle, the more sword essence he could guide. Previously, he could guide less than 1,000th of Jian Yi with all his strength, but now, buzz buzz, a shrill sword hum sounded out of thin air. The supreme and awe-inspiring sword essence that had been filling the surrounding area suddenly became more than 10 times stronger. Yes, it was dozens of times more vital. 1%. Jian Wushuang's eyes were shining. He had sensed that the sword essence he guided with all his strength was precisely 1% of the supreme sword essence. Do not underestimate this 1% of sword essence. Previously, it was only 1,000th, but it had increased Jian Wushuang's overall strength by more than 10 times. But now, thanks to you three, my cultivation of sword principle has greatly increased. Today, I can use the blood of you three immortal saints to sacrifice my sword. Jian Wushuang sneered, but his figure had already rushed out. A murderous intent instantly burst out under the background of the supreme sword essence. Realm Lord Tianchu, Heavenly Void Temple Master, and Elder Su all looked highly solemn. Be careful. I feel that this brat is even more terrifying than before. Heavenly Void Palace Master said, Chapter 2889. Instant kill. Realm Lord Tianchu and Elder Su's expressions were also extremely solemn. Jian Wushuang's figure had already appeared in front of Realm Lord Tianchu. Then he drew his sword. Jian Wushuang did not display any shocking swordsmanship. He just casually swung his sword. However, when he brandished his Blood Mountain sword, the power of the boundless sword tree, which was 33,000 meters tall, had already reached its peak. The supreme sword essence within the Blood Mountain sword also unscrupulously exploded. Wung, wung, this sword's intent was supreme. The instant it swept out, the expressions of the three immortal saints changed. After that, a majestic sword light was born. This sword light was incomparably tyrannical and huge. It blotted out the sky and covered half of the void. Chi, 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 the sound of the space being forcefully compressed, rang out continuously. The moment this boundless sword light appeared, Realm Lord Tian Chu, Elder Su, and Heavenly Void Palace Lord were all stunned. This sword, Realm Lord Tian Chu stared fixedly at this boundless sword light because this boundless sword light was heading towards him. How can it be so strong? Elder Su and Heavenly Void Palace Lord were both shocked. They initially wanted to help Realm Lord Tian Chu block this sword light, but when the sword light actually slashed out, they were both completely stunned. Only Tian Chu was left, instantly unleashing his strength to the limit. Rumble! A large amount of black divine power crazily gushed out. Tian Chu's face flushed red, his eyes flashing with an unprecedented madness. That boundless black divine power once again condensed into a huge black beast. Block it, we must block it. Tian Chu roared in his heart. Boundless sword light swept over. In an instant, the black beast was annihilated like a dried twig. After that, the boundless sword light completely engulfed Realm Lord Tian Chu's entire body. Realm Lord Tian Chu did not even have the chance to scream before he was crushed into pieces by the power of the sword light. And after the sword light annihilated Realm Lord Tian Chu, it still took a long time before it completely dissipated. Dead, dead. Elder Su and the Heavenly Void Temple Master stared with wide eyes. Realm Lord Tian Chu was the strongest immortal saint among the three of them. But now, the strongest Realm Lord Tian Chu was killed by Jian Wushuang with just one strike. What kind of strength was this? While they were in shock, Jian Wushuang's cold eyes looked at them again in the void. Sensing Jian Wushuang's gaze, the two immortal saints, who were well known in the Golden Crow Nine Realms, were frightened out of their wits. Run! Without any hesitation, Elder Su and the Heavenly Void Temple Master immediately turned and fled. At the moment they fled, they had already used their fastest speed in their lives, desperately trying to escape from Jian Wushuang's sight. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold and his killing intent surged. The two immortal saints fled at the same time. They were originally in two directions. Now that they had split up, he could only leave one person behind. He immediately locked onto this person. It was Elder Su of the Point Star Pavilion. The reason why they locked onto him was that Elder Su had attacked him without any reason. For example, there was a reason why Realm Lord Tian Chu and Temple Master Tian Su wanted to kill him. Jian Wushuang could understand that, so his killing intent was not very strong. However, Elder Su, he had no enmity with the Star Point Pavilion, so it was natural for Jian Wushuang to be angry that Elder Su had come to kill him out of the blue. As for whether or not he would offend the Star Point Pavilion after killing him, he did not care. Moreover, Elder Su was indeed closer to him. Jian Wushuang made his move. With a thought, a terrifying sword essence suddenly burst out. Together with the domain that had always existed in the surrounding void, it crazily pressed toward Elder Su. At the same time, Jian Wushuang slowly raised his palm. He pointed in the direction of Elder Su from a distance. Heaven-determining skill. Because Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the space-time rules had not reached the level of the Immortal Saint, this move would not affect the Immortal Saint too much. However, no matter how small the effect was, it would still be able to slightly hinder Elder Su. Taking advantage of this small obstacle, Jian Wushuang moved forward. Whoosh! The same sword light descended. It was still as majestic and earth-shaking as before. The sword light blotted out the sky, and the sun, completely drowning Elder Su. No, Elder Su was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He desperately tried to use his strongest technique in an attempt to block Jian Wushuang's sword. However, his swordsmanship, which had reached the second level of sword principle, the boundless sword tree, was much more powerful than before. Even the realm lord Tian Chu could not block his sword, so Elder Su certainly could not resist it. The only thing he could hope for was that he was still wearing a sacred treasure-level protective armor. Although the power of this armor was not too strong and was only at the 3rd grade, it was still his life-saving method. However, when the sword light truly descended, a crack appeared in the center of the sacred treasure level armor. The entire armor was on the verge of collapsing. How could this be? Elder Su was in disbelief. However, his life force was immediately cut off. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the middle of the void, everything calmed down. Jian Wushuang was the only one still standing in the void. As for the 3 immortal saints who had surrounded him, Realm Lord Tian Chu and Elder Su had been killed, and their divine bodies had been destroyed. Only the Palace Master of Void Temple had luckily escaped. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and put the things left behind by the immortal saints into his interspatial ring. Then he stood there, his eyes shining brightly. The boundless sword tree, which is 3,300 meters tall, did not disappoint me. It improved the power of my swordsmanship so much, and the supreme sword essence that I can guide it is even stronger. The immortal saints, including the Realm Lord and the Elder from the Star Point Pavilion, are both very strong, but they can't even take one strike from me. Jian Wushuang held the long sword tightly in his hand. He was also very excited. Before the start of the battle, he had wanted to make a breakthrough. As for how strong he would be after the breakthrough, he did not think too much about it. But now, he did not expect that his strength would increase so much once he made a breakthrough. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang looked around and saw that there were countless cultivators who had fallen into a daze in the market not far away. With a faint smile, Jian Wushuang left directly. Chapter 2890, World Shock 1. Jian Wushuang had left, and the battle had come to an end. The cultivators in the market, who had witnessed the battle from beginning to end, were completely stunned. They were all shocked, or rather, frightened. A reverent god fought against 3 immortal saints at the same time. In the end, Realm Lord Tian Chu and Elder Su were killed on the spot, and the Heavenly Void Palace Master fled in panic. A reverent god killed the immortal saint easily. This reverent god is called Jian. These cultivators murmured. In less than an hour, this news swept across the entire Golden Crow 9 realms like a huge storm. For a time, countless cultivators in the entire Golden Crow 9 realms, including the top immortal saints, were shocked. Shocked. Yes, the entire Golden Crow 9 realms was completely shocked. Star Point Sacred City was also one of the 4 great holy cities of the Golden Crow 9 realms. Star Point Sacred City was completely under the control of Star Point Pavilion. Star Point Pavilion was publicly acknowledged as the #1 chamber of commerce in the Golden Crow 9 realms. Its foundation among the 4 pavilions was not inferior to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, and its strength was abnormally tyrannical. At this moment, in the deepest part of the Star Point Pavilion's lair, 2 figures were sitting upright in a pavilion. Their expressions were extremely unsightly. Among these 2 people, one of them was a white-haired old man who wore gray clothes and looked extremely plain. This white-haired old man was the Elder Meng, who had personally gone to the Pill Sun's sacred world and participated in the auction of the Mountain River map. As for the other person, he was a long-browed elder with a thin and frail body. This long-browed elder was the biggest reliance of the Star Point Pavilion, an extremely terrifying immortal saint. Su Jian is dead, and he was killed by a divine master on the spot. When they first received the news, the long-browed elder and Elder Meng both felt incredulous. If they had not asked him personally and obtained the mirror image of the battle, they would never have believed it when they saw Elder Su being killed by Jian Wushuang. This divine master is very terrifying. Elder Meng could not help exclaiming, "I have lived for so many years, not only in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, but also in the surrounding great territories. I have seen countless divine masters, but I have never seen such a powerful divine master. I'm afraid that even in the vast third heaven, there are not many divine masters like him." It is very heaven-defying. The long-browed old man had to admit, his own strength is very impressive. The treasures he has in his hands and the secret techniques he uses are also very impressive. For example, the divine sword in his hands and the treasures he has thrown into the void, which can change the world, are all extraordinary items. In addition, Jian Yi is clearly only a supreme divinity, but he has an undying body. It's simply inconceivable, unbelievable. This is the evaluation of Jian Wushuang, made by the long-browed elder and Elder Meng. Long brows, the absolute beginning divine realm, is vast and boundless. There are countless kinds of geniuses, and some of them are even heaven-defying monsters. And now we've encountered a monster that killed Su Jian. What should we do now? Elder Meng frowned. In the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, the immortal saints were the pillars of support. Even among the 4 pavilions, there were only a few immortal saints who stayed in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. Each loss was a great loss to any one of the 4 pavilions. This time, the death of Elder Su made the Star Point Pavilion's heartache to death. However, no matter how much it hurt, the Star Point Pavilion still faced a difficult problem. That was whether or not they should take revenge for Elder Su. After all, the person who killed Elder Su was a monster. There's no other way. That long-browed old man slowly shook his head. Su Jian's death has dealt a huge blow to our Point Star Pavilion. However, that Sword One is too terrifying. However, from the mirror image, his strength has already completely surpassed that of an ordinary immortal saint. Even with the strength of Realm Lord Tianchu, he is unable to take his sword head-on. His strength has already surpassed mine. In the entire Golden Crow 9 realms, there are only 2 people who can defeat him. 2. Elder Meng's expression changed, and he asked doubtfully, "Other than Lord Bone Emperor, who else can defeat him?" "The one from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion," said the long-browed elder. "You mean," Elder Meng frowned, "hasn't that person's strength always been about the same as yours?" "No, it might have been about the same in the past, but I saw him 1,000 years ago. Although we didn't exchange blows, I could already sense that he had already taken that step, and he had already mastered the immortal body. His strength is already far above mine. If he makes a move, he should be able to fight this Jian Yi head-on, and his chances of winning should be quite high." The long-browed elder spoke in a deep voice, but suddenly he changed the topic. "However, even if that person from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, or even the Bone Emperor, personally makes a move, he might be able to defeat Jian Yi head-on. However, it is impossible to kill Jian Yi. Since Sword One has an immortal body, it is almost impossible to find someone who can kill him in the Golden Crow 9 realms. The Bone Emperor is also unable to kill a divine master who has an immortal body and is so powerful. Moreover, there are no immortal saints who specialize in soul attacks in the Golden Crow 9 realms. It is true that no one can kill him." Hearing this, Elder Meng nodded slightly. "Since our Star Point Pavilion has no way of killing him, Our Starpoint Pavilion has no choice but to endure this hatred." The long-browed elder sighed. "Give the order to say that Su Zhen's death was a treasure in the hands of his greedy sword. Now that he has been killed by Jian, it is his own fault. It has nothing to do with our Starpoint Pavilion. From now on, no one in our Starpoint Pavilion is allowed to speak of taking revenge on Jian. Anyone who disobeys will be expelled from the Starpoint Pavilion." Elder Meng frowned slightly. His emotions were a bit complicated, but he still nodded after a long while. He knew that the long-browed elder chose to endure patiently because he wanted the enmity between the Starpoint Pavilion and Jian to be put to an end, so that both sides would not continue to carry on. Although this was somewhat aggrieved, it was also the wisest and most helpless choice. After all, he was a divine master who could not be killed by the Starpoint Pavilion at all, but who was extremely powerful and could easily kill saints. If he really wanted to fight with the Starpoint Pavilion, it would definitely be a disaster for the Starpoint Pavilion. There is one more thing. From today onwards, I will also be in closed-door cultivation. I will only come out when I have truly taken that step and am able to stand shoulder to shoulder with that person from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. As for the matters in the Starpoint Pavilion, I will leave them to you," said the long-browed elder. Elder Meng responded and left immediately. Chapter 2891, World Shock 2, in the huge volcanic space in the deepest part of Fire Cloud Castle. Bai Yen stood there respectfully. In front of him, Immortal was attentively looking at a mirror image. This mirror image was the scene where Jian Wushuang fought with the 3 immortal saints. It was clear from the beginning to the end. "Haha, awesome, awesome." After Immortal finished watching the scene, he laughed out loud. A divine master killed 2 of the 3 immortal saints and scared one away. This Jian is amazing. Immortal's eyes were shining. He was also an immortal saint, but his battle strength was equal to Realm Lord Tianchu. However, Jian Wushuang had killed Realm Lord Tianchu with 1 strike at the later stage of the mirror image. He was shocked by his strength. If Jian Wushuang was so powerful, how could Bai Yen be so powerful? Bai Yen also saw the mirror image and was terrified. Now he finally understood why Jian Wushuang could address his master as Brother Mo. Jian is very talented and has unfathomable strength and means. The magic sword is not lost in his hands. Mo Tao smiled and immediately sent a message to Jian Wushuang to congratulate him on his Golden Crow 9 world fame. Jian Wushuang also quickly replied, "Crimson Rock Castle, Pill Sun Sacred World." Many great divine masters of Crimson Rock Castle stood respectfully in front of a huge secret chamber. At this moment, the door of the secret chamber slowly opened. "Have you come out?" Yunshan immediately looked up. A beautiful figure slowly walked out of the secret chamber. As soon as this figure appeared, an aura that caused everyone present to be shocked and overwhelmed spread out. This aura was the aura of an immortal saint, and the person who emitted this aura was none other than the Fort Master of Crimson Rock Fort, In Sewer. Congratulations, Fort Master, for breaking through to the immortal saint realm. Congratulations, Fort Master, for breaking through to the immortal saint realm. The voices were loud and clear, reverberating throughout the entire world. One could see that these great divine masters were all extremely excited. This was also very normal. Ever since Crimson Rock Saint died hundreds of thousands of years ago, there had not been another immortal saint in the Pill Sun Sacred World. The reason why the Pill Sun Sacred World had been constantly in the civil war over the past few years was that their strength had been significantly weakened. It was because they lacked an absolute expert that could make all the forces submit to them. And now, the Pill Sun Sacred World had once again listened to Crimson Rock Castle's orders. At this juncture, Suer had broken through to become an immortal saint. It could be said that she was justified. In the future, the Pill Sun's sacred world would have an immortal saint personally presiding over it. Castle Lord Yun Shan, Palace Master Sijun, and the others immediately rushed over to Suer. After breaking through to become an immortal saint, Suer was obviously quite informed. Uncle Yun Shan, during the time I was in seclusion, did anything happen in the Pill Sun's sacred world? No. Yun Shan shook his head. During this period of time, the Pill Sun's sacred world has been peaceful, and the Heavenly Void world hasn't made any movements. As for the Sword Alliance, because of Mr. Jian's restrictions, they have been quite quiet. That's good. Suer nodded slowly. Oh, right, Castle Lord. A few days ago, a major incident happened in the Dragon Phoenix sacred city. Yun Shan suddenly spoke. What major incident? Suer looked over. It's like this. Yun Shan immediately recounted the entire incident. After hearing this, Suer was like a statue, completely stunned. She was stunned for a long time before she slowly regained her senses. You mean Jian? He faced the joint attack of 3 immortal saints, yet he managed to kill Realm Lord Tianchu and Elder Su from the Star Point Pavilion, while he managed to escape unscathed. Suer was clearly in disbelief. Yes, not only that, his current fame in the Golden Crow 9 realms is shocking. There are even people who say that he is from the Golden Crow 9 realms. But other than the Supreme Lord Bone Emperor, the strongest person is also the most heaven-defying divine master in the history of the Golden Crow 9 realms. Yun Shan said, No wonder he doesn't care about the sacred elixirs at all. A bitter smile appeared on Suer's face. I thought that after I broke through to the immortal saint realm, I could finally look down on him and talk to him as an equal. I didn't expect that even though I broke through, the gap between him and me was still enormous. Jian, you are a monster. The 9 realms of the Golden Crow, the Bone Emperor realm, occupied nearly half of the territory. This was a vast and desolate land. Yet, in the center of this land stood a towering castle. This castle was incomparably huge, and its surface was surrounded by a large amount of green divine power. Within the castle, corpses and bones were strewn all over the ground. Many ghastly white bones, human skulls, and bones were scattered all over the ground. In the very center of the castle, there was an enormous high platform that was completely covered by skulls. On the high platform, there was a throne that was similarly made of white bones. On the throne, a skinny older man with an incomparably short stature casually sat there. This older man looked extremely weak, and when the wind blew, all the bones in his body seemed to fall apart. The aura on his body was also ordinary, and he was no different from an average person. However, it was precisely this weak older man was the indisputable overlord of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. He was the Bone Emperor. At this moment, in the void in front of the Bone Emperor, there was also a picture of a battle going on. Looking at the scene in the picture, a wicked smile appeared on the Bone Emperor's face, especially when Jian Wushuang killed Realm Lord Tianchu with one sword strike. The Bone Emperor's eyes slowly narrowed. In terms of power, this sword strike is not much weaker than mine. Of course, a mere divine master can have such battle strength, and he has an immortal body. Thanks. Interesting, very interesting. The Bone Emperor smiled sinisterly, but he was already interested in Jian Wushuang. I have dominated the 9 worlds of the Golden Crow for many years, but it has been a long time since I encountered such an interesting thing. This man named Jian, he may not be as strong as me, but with his talent, he will break through to become an immortal saint in the future. Once he breaks through, his battle strength will only be stronger than mine. I want to meet such a person. Go, find him, and invite him to my Bone Emperor realm. Tell him that I have something to discuss with him." The Bone Emperor said. There was not a single person in front of the Bone Emperor. His words seemed to be spoken to the air. However, at the end of the castle, a figure had already set off. Chapter 2892. Farewell to Chu Shi. The battle between Jian Wushuang and the three immortal saints was shocking. Countless experts from all the forces in the Golden Crow 9 realms were spreading the news. In less than a few days, Jian Wushuang's name had spread to every corner of the Golden Crow 9 realms. Many people outside of the Golden Crow 9 realms had heard about it, and they were all shocked. Monster! The #1 divine master in the history of the Golden Crow 9 realms. All the titles fell on Jian Wushuang's head. While the entire Golden Crow 9 realms was shocked by Jian Wushuang as the main character, he had already arrived at a city outside the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's base. This city was not far from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's mountain gate. Usually, genius disciples or experts of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would pass by here. Jian Wushuang was sitting quietly in a tavern, drinking quietly. On the surface, he was drinking, but in his heart, Jian Wushuang was thinking. Of course, he was thinking about how to get close to Lung Rushuang. In addition, before seeing Lung Rushuang again, Jian Wushuang still had some things to figure out. Jian Wushuang had been in the tavern for 3 days. He had concealed his aura and even disguised his appearance, so no one noticed him. But now, he had noticed 3 people walking out of the tavern. They had just walked out of a shop. They were all great divine masters, led by a purple-haired handsome youth. The purple-haired handsome youth had the most powerful aura, which had reached the level of a peak great divine master. Jian Wushuang also knew this person. That's him. Jian Wushuang grinned when he saw the purple-haired handsome youth and the other 2 fly out of the city to return to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. He immediately chased after them. In the void, the 3 purple-haired handsome young men were flying, and they were about to reach the mountain gate of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. But at this time, whoosh! Without any warning, a figure appeared in front of them out of thin air. As soon as it appeared, a huge divine power that suffocated the 3 of them came over. Is this the immortal saint? The purple-haired handsome young man and the other 2 were shocked. The strength of divine power was determined by the level of divine power. Jian Wushuang's current divine power level had indeed far exceeded that of an ordinary divine master, so it was naturally the same for divine power. "It's you!" The purple-haired handsome young man recognized Jian Wushuang at once, and the corners of his mouth could not help trembling. "Oh, Brother Chu Shi, do you still remember me? In that case, do you remember the battle with me? I'm here to meet you." Jian Wushuang smiled playfully. This purple-haired handsome young man was Chu Shi. When he opened the Dragon Phoenix list in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, Chu Shi had challenged him to a battle in order to vent his anger on Demoness Gu. However, that battle did not really take place. Upon hearing Jian Wushuang's words, Chu Shi could not help trembling. A duel with Jian Wushuang? After all, it had been many days since Jian Wushuang had fought with the 3 immortal saints. He was one of the genius disciples of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and had reached the level of a peak great divine master. He had also heard of such a thing. He knew that Jian Wushuang could easily kill the immortal saint. Even the 2 immortal saint elders in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would feel immense pressure when facing Jian Wushuang. Asking him to fight with Jian Wushuang, was that not courting death? "Senior Brother Chu Shi, do you know this person?" The 2 disciples next to him asked because they did not know what had happened, nor did they know Jian Wushuang's background. "Shut up," Chu Shi shouted directly. Then he looked at Jian Wushuang again and forced a smile on his face. Jian, Sir Jian, you must be joking. I was blind to offend you before, sir. I hope you can forgive me. Jian, the two disciples of Dragon Phoenix Pavilion were also shocked. They looked at Jian Wushuang with shock and fear. Chu Shi was also terrified. He thought that Jian Wushuang really came for the battle, so he immediately begged for mercy. However, he was careful. He quietly took out a message token and was ready to ask the experts of Dragon Phoenix Pavilion for help. After all, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's nest was nearby. As soon as he sent the message, the immortal saint of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would immediately come to his rescue. However, how could he hide his thoughts from Jian Wushuang? Chu Shi, I advise you not to play any tricks. Otherwise, I won't be polite, Jian Wushuang said with a wicked smile. Chu Shi's hands trembled, and his face was extremely embarrassed. As for the communication, it naturally failed. Don't worry. I'm not here to find trouble with you, nor for the duel. I just have some questions to ask you. I hope you can answer them truthfully, Jian Wushuang said. If you have any questions, please ask me. I'll tell you everything, Chu Shi said. My question is very simple. It's about your Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's young phoenix. I want you to tell me everything you know, Jian Wushuang said directly. Young phoenix? Junior sister Lung? Chu Shi's expression changed, and he immediately understood. When the Dragon Phoenix list was released, Jian had come into contact with the young phoenix. At that time, everyone could see that Jian Wushuang and the young phoenix seemed to have a special relationship. It was normal for Jian to ask about the young phoenix now. Facing Jian Wushuang, Chu Shi knew Jian Wushuang's fierce reputation and strength, so he did not dare to hide anything. He immediately told him everything he knew about the young phoenix. Jian Wushuang frowned when he heard this. What Chu Shi said was not very different from what was spread in the outside world. What he said was also what he already knew. It was meaningless. Chu Shi, do you really want to die? Jian Wushuang's face darkened. Do you think I won't dare to kill you because you are a genius disciple of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion? No. Chu Shi shook his head immediately. Master Jian, I've told you everything I know. If you don't believe me, you can ask my two junior brothers. They must know the same thing. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Chu Shi did not look like he was lying. Master Jian, in fact, we don't know much about Junior Sister Lung. Junior Sister Lung has always been a recluse and has almost never interacted with us. Junior Sister Lung has been in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion for so many years, but she only spoke to me twice, and it was the simplest 2 sentences. In addition, some of Junior Sister Lung's matters are also considered top secret in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Only her master, Elder Qin, and the other immortal saint elders of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion know about these things. Disciples like us really don't know anything, Chu Shi said. Chapter 2893. Transfer hearing Chu Shi's words, Jian Wushuang's frown deepened. He knew that Lung Wushuang was a loner. In his previous life, Lung Wushuang was such a loner. However, Jian Wushuang did not expect that some things about Lung Wushuang were so secret in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion that even genius disciples like Chu Shi were not qualified to know about it. Only the top immortal saints knew about it. I wanted to find out about Shuang Er's background and her high talent from Chu Shi. Besides, Shuang Er is only a divine master, but she is ranked 3rd on the Dragon Phoenix list. There must be some important secrets. But now, it seems that I have to find the immortal saint from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Jian Wushuang pondered. There were a total of 3 known immortal saints in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. These 3 should know about it. However, Some of Lung Rushwang's matters were kept a secret within the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Even if he went to inquire about it, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would most likely not tell him, unless he had the ability to make the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion bow to him, such as reaching the level of the Bone Emperor. But now, although he had killed 2 immortal saints in the previous battle, and his battle strength was terrifying enough to make the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion take him seriously and not dare to underestimate him, he still could not make the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion bow to him. Forget it. I can only think of a way to deal with the matter of Shuang after I become stronger, Jian Wushuang thought. He had made up his mind that he would visit Lung Rushuang when he was stronger. By then, he would know everything about Lung Rushwang's life, even in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. You can go. Jian Wushuang turned around and left. After Jian Wushuang left, Chu Shi and the other 2 finally let out a sigh of relief. Chu Shi was especially worried that Jian Wushuang would kill him. After all, he had offended Jian Wushuang before. Senior brother Chu Shi, was that really Jian the monster who killed 2 immortal saints? A disciple from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion looked over. Who else could it be? Chu Shi glanced at the disciple, and then said seriously, "Let's go back. We have to report this to Elder Qin and the others." Chu Shi and the other 2 immediately went back to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. After seeing Chu Shi, Jian Wushuang held back his excitement. Instead of waiting outside the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, he went back to the Pill Sun sacred world. This time, he came back to solve the awkward situation of the Sword Alliance in the Pill Sun sacred world. After all, the Pill Sun sacred world was now completely under the control of the Crimson Rock Castle. All the forces listened to the orders of the Crimson Rock Castle, but the Sword Alliance had always been very special. After all, the Sword Alliance was very powerful, and the key was the existence of the Alliance Master. The Crimson Rock Castle could not control the Sword Alliance at all. Even the experts in the Sword Alliance had always wanted to expand and replace the Crimson Rock Castle. They were just suppressed by Jian Wushuang. However, this suppression could not last long. Therefore, Jian Wushuang had already planned for the Sword Alliance. The best way was to conquer a world and move the Sword Alliance completely to the sacred world. Now, the opportunity had come. In the lofty hall of the Sword Alliance, Jian Wushuang sat on the throne at the top. Xiao Tiexin stood beside him, and many experts of the Sword Alliance looked at Jian Wushuang with respect and worship. In the Sword Alliance, Jian Wushuang was God and heaven. There was no doubt about that. Jian Wushuang glanced at these experts and nodded slightly. He had not left the Pill Sun sacred world for a long time. During this time, Xiao Tiexin clearly followed his orders and did not expand to the outside world. There were not many more experts in the Sword Alliance than before. "Everyone, I have called you here today for one thing." Jian Wushuang's voice reverberated throughout the hall. "I will give you 1 year to prepare. After 1 year, all the experts of the Sword Alliance will leave the Pill Sun sacred world with me." As soon as Jian Wushuang said this, the entire hall was in an uproar. Most people were baffled and did not know what Jian Wushuang meant. "Young master," Xiao Tiexin also asked, "are you going to take the entire Sword Alliance out of the Pill Sun sacred world?" "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded. "Where to?" Xiao Tiexin asked again. "To the Heaven Curve world," Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Heaven Curve world. Many experts of the Sword Alliance still frowned. These experts were very weak. Only Elder Tong, Snake Elder, and Great Divine Master Ju Xian were great divine masters. The rest were only divine masters. Apart from Elder Tong, the rest of them had never ventured outside. They did not know much about the situation outside. To them, The Pill Sun sacred world was not small at all. They had already accumulated a certain amount of foundation here. Of course, they did not want to leave. Not to mention them, even Xiao Tiexin, Jian Wushuang's intimate maid, did not want to leave. Jian Wushuang naturally noticed the changes in the expressions of the people in front of him. He immediately lowered his voice. One mountain cannot accommodate two tigers. The Pill Sun's sacred world already has the Crimson Rock Castle, so it cannot accommodate a sword alliance that is not weaker than Crimson Rock Castle, or even stronger. The Heaven Curve world is much larger than the Pill Sun's sacred world, with more experts and a bigger platform. Most importantly, I have killed the world master of the Heaven Curve world. I will bring the corpse puppet army to Heaven Curve world immediately. With a wave of my hand, I can wipe out all the resistance forces and experts in the Heaven Curve world, so that the Sword Union can occupy the vast sacred world safely. This is the best result for the Sword Alliance. Of course, I know that you are all born in the Pill Sun's sacred world, and your roots are here. You don't want to leave so easily, so I won't force you. In short, those who are willing to go with me will leave in a year. If not, I will give you a batch of resources and let you leave. But in a year, there will be no sword alliance in the Pill Sun sacred world. Jian Wushuang said firmly, without any room for negotiation. He had made this decision long ago. His original purpose in founding the Sword Alliance was to help the Crimson Rock Castle regain control of the Pill Sun sacred world. He would never allow the Sword Alliance to threaten the status of the Crimson Rock Castle. Now that he had conquered a holy world for the Sword Alliance and completely transferred the Sword Alliance there, he had done his best as the Alliance Master. Hearing Jian Wushuang's words, many experts of the Sword Alliance were shocked. They all heard that Jian Wushuang had killed the Realm Lord of the Heaven Curve world with his own hands. A Realm Lord should be an immortal saint, right? Chapter 2894. Make way. The Alliance Master killed an immortal saint with his own hands. The experts of the Sword Alliance were shocked. After a short moment of shock, they began to ponder. They were hesitating whether to follow Jian Wushuang to the Heaven Curve world. Obviously, the Heaven Curve world was more vast than the Pill Sun sacred world, and the platform was also larger. The Sword Alliance could directly control everything there, which was very beneficial to every cultivator in the Sword Alliance. However, in that case, they had to leave the Pill Sun sacred world. Everyone was hesitating. Jian Wushuang did not have time to wait for them to make a decision. He glanced at Xiao Tiexin beside him and said, "Exionaire, you heard what I said. I'll leave the rest to you." "Yes." Xiao Tiexin nodded respectfully. Jian Wushuang disappeared from the hall. After leaving the Sword Alliance, Jian Wushuang immediately went to Crimson Rock Castle. In Crimson Rock Castle, Jian Wushuang met Yin Su'er, who had broken through to become an immortal saint. "Castle Lord Yin, congratulations. You've finally reached the immortal saint level." Jian Wushuang smiled and said, "It's all thanks to you, Mr. Jian Yi. Su'er is very grateful for your help." Yin Su'er said solemnly. She was telling the truth. There were two reasons why she was able to make the breakthrough. First, the crisis in Crimson Rock Castle had been resolved. The situation had been resolved, and her worry had completely disappeared. Second, it was because of the Saint Ascension Elixir. The crisis in Crimson Rock Castle had been resolved with Jian Wushuang's full help, and the Saint Ascension Elixir had been given to her directly by Jian Wushuang. "Mr. Jian Yi, I heard that you fought against 3 immortal saints alone in the Dragon Phoenix Sacred City. You even killed Realm Lord Tianchu and Elder Su on the spot. What an awe-inspiring and admirable skill you have." Yin Su'er sighed softly. "Well, let's not talk about formalities for now." Jian Wushuang waved his hand and said, "I'm here today for one thing." Yin Suer immediately looked over. Realm Lord Tianchu is dead. Without the immortal saint in charge of the Tianchu world, it should be a mess now. I plan to take the corpse puppet army to sweep the obstacles in the Tianchu world and then transfer the Sword Alliance there, Jian Wushuang said. Sweep the Tianchu world. Yin Suer was shocked. Tianchu world was a sacred world that was much bigger than the Pill Sun's sacred world. It was so domineering to sweep the entire sacred world. However, Yin Suer also knew that Jian Wushuang did have such strength. Mr. Jian Yi, with your current strength, it's easy for you to sweep the Tianchu world, but I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to transfer the Sword Alliance there, Yin Suer said. Why? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Mr. Jian Yi, the Sword Alliance is a big force after all. It has a big business and many cultivators under its command. If you want to transfer the Sword Alliance at one time, you must bring a lot of cultivators with you. If so many cultivators go directly to the Heaven Curve world through the space passage, the price will be too high. Even you, Mr. Jian Yi, don't want to bear such a huge price, Yin Suer said. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. It was true that the cost of teleporting from one realm to another was very high. Jian Wushuang did not care about the cost of tens or hundreds of cultivators. However, there were at least 10,000 cultivators in such a large Sword Alliance. If there were families, there would be even more. Even Jian Wushuang would not be able to afford the cost of teleportation. If I can't use the space passage to transfer, I'll have to rely on my own strength to get from the Pill Sun's sacred world to the Heaven Curve world. However, there are two realms between the Pill Sun's sacred world and the Heaven Curve world. These two realms are the Heaven Void world and the Dragon God world. If the Sword Alliance wants to go to the Heaven Curve world, they have to pass through these two realms. In other words, Mr. Jian Yi, you have to borrow the passage from these two realms. In these two realms, the Dragon God realm is still fine. The Dragon God realm lord, the old Dragon God, used to have a good relationship with my father. The reason why the Divine Void realm hasn't been able to attack our Pill Sun's sacred world is that the Dragon God realm is watching us from the side, which is enough to intimidate the Divine Void realm. As long as I send a message to the old Dragon God, or if Mr. Jian Yi goes to visit him personally, the old Dragon God will definitely agree to take the path. But the key is the Heavenly Void realm, Yin Suer said. The Heavenly Void world. Jian Wushuang curled his lips. As long as the old Dragon God agrees to let me pass, I'll go there myself. Yin Suer raised her eyebrows. She already knew what Jian Wushuang was going to do. Jian Wushuang did not stay in the Pill Sun's sacred world any longer. He immediately led the corpse puppet army to the Heavenly Void world. The Heavenly Void world was ruled by the Heavenly Void Palace. The Heavenly Void Palace was located at the core of the Heavenly Void world. It was on a vast and beautiful island. The island was filled with sparrows and sparrows. It was a paradise on earth. To the various forces and countless cultivators in the Heavenly Void world, this island was also a holy land that everyone yearned for. The owner of the island, the Heavenly Void Temple Master, had long been a legend in the Heavenly Void world. At this moment, Jian Wushuang had already arrived at the void above the island. Looking down at the celestial-like Heavenly Void Temple on the island through the layer of restrictions covering the island, a teasing smile appeared on the corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth. That Heavenly Void Palace master really knows how to enjoy himself. The Heavenly Void Palace he created is really magnificent. After mumbling, Jian Wushuang shouted in a low voice, "Heavenly Void Palace Master, get out here! Get out here!" A mighty voice that sounded like thunder echoed in the entire Heavenly Void Palace. The peace in the Heavenly Void Palace was immediately broken. In an instant, countless figures rushed out of the island. At the same time, there were also many shocked and furious voices. Who dares to be presumptuous in front of our Heavenly Void Palace? Who dares to be disrespectful to the Lord Palace Master? How dare you ask the Lord Palace Master to get out? How dare you? Those who rushed out were all experts from the Heavenly Void Palace. Their bodies were filled with a fit of shocking anger. When they appeared in the void and saw Jian Wushuang standing outside the island, the aura he emitted was only that of a divine master. The anger of these experts grew even more. A mere divine master dares to shout in front of the Heavenly Void Palace. He's really courting death. Kill him. Immediately, experts of the Heavenly Void Palace attacked, wanting to kill Jian Wushuang on the spot. Chapter 2895. Bow your head. Stop. A roar suddenly echoed in the sky. The roar contained a terrifying pressure. The experts of the Heavenly Void Palace, who were about to kill Jian Wushuang, immediately stopped under the pressure. Countless eyes looked at the end of the island. There, a figure slowly rose. It was the Heavenly Void Palace Master. Palace Master. Palace Master has appeared. The experts of the Heavenly Void Palace immediately showed a fanatical look. To them, the Heavenly Void Palace Master was a godlike existence, the ruler of the Heavenly Void world, and they blindly worshipped him. Jian Wushuang also saw the Heavenly Void Palace Master at this moment, but then he smiled disdainfully. Heavenly Void Temple Master, aren't you a little too timid? I hid underground and only condensed a consciousness avatar to see me. Are you afraid that I will directly kill you when I see you? Jian Wushuang did not conceal the mockery in his words. Upon hearing this, most experts of Heavenly Void Temple were immediately furious. However, some of the more powerful experts who had connections in the Golden Crow Nine Realms were staring at Jian Wushuang. This man is only a divine master, but he is so fearless when facing the Palace Master. He even looks down on us. Is he Jian Yi? Jian Yi, yes, it must be him. Only he dares to face the Palace Master so fearlessly. Jian Yi actually came directly to the gate of the Heavenly Void Palace. Those who knew Jian Wushuang's identity and strength were shocked. They knew that when Sword One fought against the three immortal saints alone, one of them was their Palace Master. Only their Palace Master survived at that time. But now, Jian Yi came to the Heavenly Void Palace. It was no wonder that the Palace Master did not dare to meet him in person. He had only condensed a consciousness avatar. The consciousness avatar of the Heavenly Void Palace Master also stared at Jian Wushuang with a cold face. Jian Yi, how dare you come to the Heavenly Void world? Don't forget the agreement that Lord Bone Emperor made with the other forces. That agreement. Jian Wushuang's expression changed. Then he smiled and said, I've heard of that agreement. Isn't it that a realm master or an immortal saint is not allowed to set foot in other sacred worlds? But don't forget that I'm not a realm master and am not an immortal saint. In that case, how can I not come to the Heavenly Void world? Heavenly Void Temple Master was stunned. He then remembered that although Jian Wushuang had the battle strength to kill an immortal saint, his realm was only that of a divine master. Yes, he was only a divine master, and he was not a master of a world. That agreement could not restrict him, so he did not have to keep it. Jian Yi, there is no great enmity between us. Although I killed you with Realm Lord Tianchu and Elder Su, I did not kill you. On the contrary, I improved your strength, Heavenly Void Temple Master said. Oh, you mean I shouldn't blame you, but thank you? Jian Wushuang sneered. No, I'm just saying that we don't have a deep hatred. so there's no need to fight to the death. But if you're still angry, I'll pay a price to apologize to you, Heavenly Void Temple Master said. Jian Wushuang could tell that the Temple Master had already decided to bow his head from his words. He was not the only one who had heard it. The experts of the Heavenly Void Palace had also heard it. Most of the people who did not know what was going on were stunned. They could not believe that their palace master would bow his head to a mere divine master like Jian Wushuang. Only those who knew what had happened nodded secretly. They knew that what the temple master had done was a wise move. You're right. The hatred between us was not too great, so I don't have to kill you. Since you're willing to make amends, as long as you're sincere enough, I can accept it. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. How about this? I don't want too much. 400,000 sacred elixirs, and we can end the grudge between us. The sacred elixirs that Jian Wushuang asked for were reasonable. An ordinary immortal saint had 500,000 to 600,000 sacred elixirs. As a master of a world, the Heavenly Void Temple Master had accumulated wealth for so many years, so his wealth was naturally higher. It was estimated that he could afford more than 1,000,000 sacred elixirs. Jian Wushuang only wanted 400,000 sacred elixirs, which was already considered very merciful. As expected, after hearing Jian Wushuang's request, the Heavenly Void Temple Master, although a little distressed, agreed to it directly. I can give you 400,000 sacred elixirs. The Master of Heaven Void Temple's consciousness avatar nodded, and a stream of light immediately shot toward Jian Wushuang from the deepest part of Heaven Void Temple. Jian Wushuang reached out and took the interspatial ring from the stream of light. He checked it carefully and found that there were indeed no less than 400,000 sacred elixirs in the interspatial ring. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang smiled in his heart. Previously, he had killed Realm Lord Tianchu and Elder Su and obtained their interspatial rings, which contained many sacred elixirs and various treasures. Now, he had obtained 400,000 sacred elixirs from the Heavenly Void Temple Master. Jian Wushuang already had no less than 2,000,000 sacred elixirs. Of course, 2,000,000 sacred elixirs were far from enough for him to break through from an advanced Great Divine Master to a peak Great Divine Master, but it was still a considerable amount of wealth. Temple Master, I have another small matter that I need your cooperation with, Jian Wushuang said. What is it? Temple Master asked patiently. Well, I have established a force called the Sword Alliance in the Pill Sun's sacred world. It won't be long before I transfer the Sword Alliance to the Heaven Curve world. Many cultivators of the Sword Alliance will need to pass through your Heavenly Void world. I hope you can cooperate with me. If possible, you'd better arrange for your Heavenly Void army to escort you personally in case anything goes wrong, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Not only do we have to cooperate, but we also have to escort them. Although the Heavenly Void Temple Master was a little angry, he did not dare lose his temper. Sure. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Jian Wushuang smiled and turned to leave. Seeing Jian Wushuang leave, the Heavenly Void Temple Master let out a heavy sigh. Then his consciousness avatar slowly disappeared into the void. The cultivators of the Heavenly Void Temple were still in a daze. They had not recovered from their shock. As for Jian Wushuang, after he had agreed with the master of the Heaven Void Temple, he immediately left and went to the Dragon God realm to meet the old Dragon God. Chapter 2896. Jian Yi arrived, as Yin Suer had said. The old Dragon God was very friendly to Jian Wushuang. When he knew that Jian Wushuang was here to borrow the path, he agreed without hesitation. Since then, the matter of borrowing the path had been completed, and the next step was to flatten the Heaven Curve world. Jian Wushuang soon arrived in the Heaven Curve world. The Heaven Curve world was originally the supreme realm of the World Master, and all the forces had submitted to him. His Heaven Curve Palace was also the indisputable habitat of the Heaven Curve world. However, since the news spread that the World Master was killed by Jian Wushuang, the Heaven Curve world immediately faced the same situation as the Pill Sun's sacred world. A lot of disputes began to appear. The Heaven Curve Palace could no longer keep its word like before. There were even factions fighting among themselves. In short, the Heaven Curve world was now very chaotic. In a grand hall in the Heaven Curve Palace, dozens of figures gathered together. They were all-powerful, great divine masters. The leader of them was a brown-haired man. This brown-haired man was none other than the second unrivaled divine master in the Heaven Curve world, apart from the Black Blood Emperor, Divine Master Blood Lamp. Chaos, chaos. The entire Heaven Curve world is in chaos now. Our Heaven Curve world's territory is extremely vast, and there are many experts. These experts have formed many major powers, and their foundations are all extraordinary. Previously, when the Realm Lord was here, none of these powers dared to disobey his orders. But now that the Realm Lord has died, these major powers immediately began to have their own intentions. Not to mention these big forces. Even the people from the Deacon's Hall, the Heaven Pavilion, and the Heaven Curve Army in our Heaven Curve Palace are doing something. Even Lord Bloodlamp's orders are ignored. Many great divine masters were discussing, but none of them looked good. All right, shut up. Bloodlamp Divine Master finally spoke. As soon as he spoke, everyone in the hall immediately quieted down. Bloodlamp Divine Master fell silent for a moment before he finally spoke. It has been so many years since the establishment of the Heavenly Curve world. The Realm Lord has always revered the Heavenly Curve world. Now that the Realm Lord has suddenly fallen, it is inevitable that there would be some commotion. Now, we have no way to complain about this. Instead, we should think of ways to deal with the current situation. And there's only one way to calm the chaos in the Heavenly Curve world. That is to use a powerful method to intimidate the various powers and calm them down, just like how the Realm Lord did before. But such a person, Bloodlamp could not help but frown. What he said was indeed the best method. But there was not anyone in the Heavenly Curve world who could make the experts of the various powers in the Heavenly Curve world not dare to act rashly. He was the strongest person in the Heavenly Curve world in terms of personal strength. However, he was only an invincible divine master in the first stage. In terms of combat strength, he was weaker than the Marquis of 3 who had fought with Jian Wushuang before. Although he was stronger than the peak divine masters, the experts in the Heavenly Curve world were as numerous as the clouds. There were several powerful peak divine masters. Any 2 or 3 of them working together would be enough to fight against him. With his strength alone, he's no threat to the world. Damn it, it's fine if the Realm Lord died, but even the Black Blood Emperor is dead. Otherwise, with the Black Blood Emperor's strength, if he joined forces with me, it would be enough to make the various powers in the Heavenly Curve world not dare to act rashly. The Bloodlamp Divine Master cursed in his heart. The Black Blood Emperor is the second stage of the Invincible Divine Master. The combat strength is much stronger than him. The 2 unrivaled, reverent gods working together were enough to sweep through all the forces of the Heavenly Curve world. But the crux of the matter was that the Black Blood Emperor had also fallen. And just as Bloodlamp, reverent god, and the others were frowning, whoosh, a figure appeared in the hall without any warning. Everyone, is there anything I can help you with? A faint smile with a hint of mockery reverberated in the hall. All the experts in the hall immediately turned to look at the newcomer. Everyone was shocked when they saw him. You are Jian. Divine Master Bloodlamp stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian? The moment the name was uttered, the entire hall burst into an uproar. The great divine masters in the hall immediately distanced themselves from Jian Wushuang and stared at him with fear and vigilance. A few of them even took out their magic weapons on the spot. "What's wrong? Do you want to fight me?" Jian Wushuang crossed his arms and glanced at the great divine masters who took out their magic weapons. The great divine masters were shocked, and their hearts could not help trembling. "Put them away," Divine Master Bloodlamp shouted. The great divine masters immediately put their magic weapons back into their interspatial rings. Divine Master Bloodlamp looked at Jian Wushuang and took a deep breath. After a long while, he said, "May I know why Sir Jian has come to our Heavenly Curve Palace?" Although they were both divine masters, Divine Master Bloodlamp was still a genuine invincible divine master. However, when he faced Jian Wushuang, he had to respectfully address him as Sir. That was the difference between them. "I came here for 2 reasons. Jian Wushuang extended 2 fingers. "First, from today onward, the Heavenly Curve world will respect me. Experts from all forces in the Heavenly Curve world must submit to me. Those who refuse to submit will be killed without mercy." Everyone in the hall was stunned, but no one dared to object. They did not have the courage to fight against Jian Wushuang, who could directly kill Realm Master Tian Chu. As for avenging Realm Master Tian Chu, they did not have the slightest intention to do so. After all, they were only the subordinates of Realm Master Tian Chu, and because Realm Master Tian Chu was too aloof, they did not have a deep relationship with him. In addition, now that the Heavenly Curve world was in chaos, someone needed to calm it down. Divine Master Bloodlamp was not qualified, but Jian Wushuang definitely had the ability to do so. Secondly, I once created a force called the Sword Alliance in the Pill Sun's sacred world. It won't be long before the Sword Alliance is transferred to the Heavenly Curve world. By then, the Sword Alliance will be supreme in the Heavenly Curve world, and Heavenly Curve Palace will cease to exist. As for you, if you are willing, you can join the Sword Alliance. I can guarantee that you will have a place in the Sword Alliance in the future. If you are not willing, you can leave. But I don't want any of you to mention Heavenly Curve Palace in the future," Jian Wushuang said coldly. Hearing this, the great divine masters in the hall looked at each other with mixed feelings. But at the same time, no one dared to go against Jian Wushuang's words. Chapter 2897. Bone Emperor invites you. Jian Wushuang stood quietly in the hall, waiting for the response of the people in front of him. After a brief discussion, the experts of Heavenly Curve Palace came to a unanimous decision. "Lord Jian, we are willing to follow you. From now on, you will be the most respected person in the Heavenly Curve world," Divine Master Bloodlamp said solemnly. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled with satisfaction, but he was not surprised. He had long heard that the former Realm Master of Heavenly Curve world was supreme and overbearing in the Heavenly Curve world, whether to outsiders or his subordinates. Therefore, not many people in the Heavenly Curve world were truly loyal to him. The Black Blood Emperor he killed was one of them, but Bloodlamp Divine Master was not absolutely loyal to the Realm Master of Heavenly Curve world. Now that Realm Master Tian Chu was dead, it was the wisest choice for Bloodlamp Divine Master and the others to submit to him. After subduing Bloodlamp Divine Master and the others, Jian Wushuang would begin to pacify the turmoil in the Heavenly Curve world. The Heavenly Curve world was in chaos because it lacked the Immortal Saint's battle strength. But now that Jian Wushuang had arrived, it was easy for him to pacify the turmoil. He took out the Corpse Puppet Army and led it by Divine Master Bloodlamp to wipe out the forces. Even if there were a stubborn resistance, he would come out personally. In front of his absolute strength, the experts of the Heavenly Curve world had no room to struggle. In less than a month, the turmoil in the heavenly curve world was completely calmed down. The forces bowed their heads and submitted to him. Jian Wushuang had officially taken over the fallen realm master and become the new ruler of the heavenly curve world. Since then, all the preparations had been completed. All that was left was for the Sword Alliance to transfer over. In a desolate void in the heavenly curve world, buzz, a hidden space passage suddenly lit up. A moment later, a black-robed figure appeared in the void like a ghost. As he arrived at the heavenly curve world, the ghost figure raised his head, revealing a pair of demonic eyes. That Jian is really troublesome. Previously, he killed the heavenly curve world lord and Elder Su in the Dragon Phoenix sacred city. After that, he returned to the Pill Sun's sacred world. When I rushed to the Pill Sun's sacred world, he went to the heavenly void temple. He had already gone to the dragon god world by the time I arrived to look for the old dragon god. When I received the news and went to the dragon god world again, this sword one actually came to the heavenly curve world again. The ghost figure shook his head. He felt bitter in his heart. I hope I can meet him this time. The ghost figure immediately set off. Soon, he arrived at the former base of Heavenly Curve Palace. He did not make a wasted trip this time because he was indeed still in Heavenly Curve Palace. Mr. Jian, the ghost figure came to Jian Wushuang and said with a smile. Although his expression was modest, he was not too afraid. Who are you? Jian Wushuang looked at the person in front of him in confusion. The aura of the person in front of him was very strange and obscure. However, Jian Wushuang could still tell that this person was a genuine immortal saint, Im Dongling from the Bone Emperor realm. The ghost figure raised his head, revealing an extremely demonic young face. Bone Emperor realm? You're from the Bone Emperor realm? Jian Wushuang was stunned. The most powerful expert in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow was the Supreme Bone Emperor. Not only was he terrifyingly strong, but he was unrivaled in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. He also had many experts under his command, including several immortal saints. When the Dragon Phoenix list was released, one of the immortal saints under the Bone Emperor went to attend the ceremony. Now, Dongling was obviously the second one. Mr. Jian, am here today on the order of my Lord Bone Emperor. My lord wants to invite you to the Bone Emperor realm to meet him, Dongling said. Bone Emperor invited me? Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. He had no contact with this Bone Emperor, and they had no contact at all. But now, this Bone Emperor had specially sent someone to invite him. This made Jian Wushuang curious about the purpose of the Bone Emperor. Could it be that the Bone Emperor felt threatened by my previous achievements and potential, so he came to find me? Jian Wushuang thought to himself. However, he immediately denied this guess. No, that Bone Emperor is not a fool for being the overlord of the 9 Golden Crow realms for so long. He should know that what I have is not limited by the 9 Golden Crow realms. I will definitely leave the 9 Golden Crow realms for a more vast place in the future. It won't be long before I leave. There's no need for him to get involved with me. He just needs to wait for me to leave. By then, he will still be the overlord of the 9 Golden Crow realms. I won't affect his status at all. Secondly, even if he is very jealous, he should be able to tell that he can't kill me. In the previous battle, Jian Wushuang had revealed many trump cards, including his immortal body. Realm Master Tianchu and the others could not control the immortal body at all, and they were still far from it. However, as long as an expert had the immortal body, it would be very difficult for an immortal saint of the same level to kill him. Although Jian Wushuang was not an immortal saint, his battle strength was much stronger than that of an ordinary immortal saint. Moreover, he had an immortal body. Therefore, Even if Lord Bone Emperor attacked him personally, he could defeat or suppress him. However, it was impossible to kill him. Bone Emperor should also know this. Therefore, the Bone Emperor came to invite him was most likely not to deal with him, but for other purposes. However, Jian Wushuang could not guess what his purpose was. Mr. Dongling, do you know why the Bone Emperor invited me? Jian Wushuang asked. My lord hasn't told me. Dongling shook her head. Jian Wushuang knocked on the armchair with his fingers. Then, after a moment of hesitation, he made a decision. Since the Bone Emperor invited me, I'll go with you. Jian Wushuang smiled. Seeing Jian Wushuang agree, Dongling also smiled. After Jian Wushuang gave a few instructions to Divine Master Bloodlamp, he followed Dongling to the Bone Emperor realm. The Bone Emperor realm was an emperor realm. In terms of territory, the Bone Emperor realm was much larger than the other realms in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. Half of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow territory was occupied by the Bone Emperor realm. With such a large territory, there were naturally more experts. It was said that there were several immortal saints in the Bone Emperor realm, but most of them had submitted to the Bone Emperor. Whether it was in the Bone Emperor realm or in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, the Bone Emperor was a man of his word. From this, one could see his strength. Chapter 2898. Bone Emperor under the guidance of Dongling, Jian Wushuang arrived at the Bone Emperor Castle. Upon entering the Bone Emperor Castle, all he could see was a pile of white bones. When he reached the deepest part of the Bone Emperor Castle, Jian Wushuang finally saw the Bone Emperor on a high platform made entirely of skulls. Sir, Mr. Jian, he has arrived. Dongling greeted respectfully. Greetings, Lord Bone Emperor. Jian Wushuang also bowed humbly. He knew very well that the Bone Emperor was far stronger than him in terms of strength alone. He should also maintain a certain amount of respect in front of the Bone Emperor. While bowing, he also looked at the skinny, short, and ordinary-looking old man on the throne. At first glance, this old man looked no different from an ordinary person. If it were not for the fact that they were in the Bone Emperor Castle, it was hard for Jian Wushuang to imagine that this old man was the overlord of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. Dongling, you may leave first, Bone Emperor ordered in a gentle voice. Yes. Dongling immediately left, leaving only Jian Wushuang and Bone Emperor in the vast space of corpses. Please take a seat. Bone Emperor waved his hand, and a throne made of white bones appeared behind Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang did not stand on ceremony and directly sat down. Then, the throne rose to a high place and sat on the same level as the Bone Emperor. Jian Yi, do you know why I've invited you here today? Bone Emperor looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. I don't know. Please enlighten me, Lord Bone Emperor. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Actually, it's nothing. I just feel that you have great potential, so I want to meet you. The Bone Emperor said. Is it that simple? Jian Wushuang frowned. Of course, he did not think that the Bone Emperor's purpose was so simple. Jian Yi, I have investigated your information. You came from the Pill Sun's sacred world and rose for a very short time. When you rose, you tried to help the declining Crimson Rock Castle. However, as far as I know, there is no relationship between you and Crimson Rock Castle. So, if I'm not wrong, you must have a deep relationship with the fallen Crimson Rock Saint, right? The Bone Emperor suddenly asked. Yes, I do. Jian Wushuang did not deny it. Are you a personal disciple of Saint Crimson Rock? The Bone Emperor asked. No. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Saint Crimson Rock and I are just working together. His remaining consciousness has given me a lot of benefits. So I promise to help his daughter, Yin Sewer, get out of this predicament and take full control of Crimson Rock Castle. His relationship with the Crimson Rock Saint and the agreement between the two of them were not convenient to announce previously. However, now that the Pill Sun's sacred world had completely stabilized, there was nothing left to hide. Is that so? The Bone Emperor raised his brows. Following that, he smiled sinisterly and said, "That Crimson Rock saint has really good taste. He is clearly already dead, yet he was able to invite such a genius to help Crimson Rock Castle. If Crimson Rock Castle did not have your full assistance, I'm afraid it would have long ceased to exist." After a pause, Bone Emperor spoke again. "For a genius like you, or even a monster, to ask you to work for him wholeheartedly, Saint Crimson Rock must have paid a great price." Jian Wushuang's expression changed. He vaguely felt that this Lord Bone Emperor was trying to trick him again. Saint Crimson Rock did pay a price, but when I agreed with Saint Crimson Rock, I didn't even reach the level of Divine Master. Therefore, my horizons were very limited. The treasures given by Saint Crimson Rock were not very precious, but they were of great use to me at that time. As a person who values friendship, I will do my best to fulfill my promise to others. Although it's a little difficult, I will still do my best. Jian Wushuang said. "That can't be right," Bone Emperor said with a strange smile. "It's a scroll of heaven sealing painting. It's a treasure that many immortal saints would fight over. So how could it become an insignificant treasure in your mouth?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's expression suddenly changed. Although he recovered immediately, Bone Emperor still noticed it. Bone Emperor's eyes immediately flashed with a bright light. Sure enough, Hongsher gave you the heaven-sealing map scroll in his hand. "Lord Bone Emperor, if you have anything to ask, feel free to ask. There's no need to beat around the bush." Jian Wushuang frowned with some displeasure. "Ha, don't be nervous. It's just that I couldn't be sure before, so I can't say too much about some things. But now that I know that Hongshi's heaven-sealing map scroll is in your hands, it's easy to deal with." Bone Emperor smiled indifferently. "The Seal the Heavens painting, that's a good thing. It's said that the complete Seal of the Heavens painting contains a great fortune, and it's even related to a great secret. But unfortunately, the Seal the Heavens painting has been divided into countless pieces since a long time ago. So it's impossible to gather the complete Seal of the Heavens painting. However, there have been rumors in the outside world that even if there is only one heaven-sealing painting scroll, it will be of great help to the cultivator. Gathering 2 scrolls is even more useful. As for gathering 3 scrolls, it is said that you can get a great opportunity. Although I don't know whether this rumor is true or not, since it can spread throughout the entire absolute beginning divine realm, it is most likely useful. And I have known for a long time that Crimson Rock has a heaven-sealing painting scroll. Even his death is related to this heaven-sealing painting scroll. However, since his death, some of the treasures in his hands have been passed down from Crimson Rock Castle. However, there has been no news of the heaven-sealing scroll. I only heard that he left it in his tomb, waiting for someone to pass his test and become his personal disciple. Since the consciousness left by Saint Crimson Rock has met you for the new year and agreed with you, the heaven-sealing scroll most likely fell into your hands. Only treasures like the heaven-sealing scroll can move a genius like you. Therefore, I deliberately tested you just now. Now, it seems that it's true." However, Jian Wushuang's expression had turned cold. "Indeed, the heaven-sealing scroll is in my hands. Could it be that Lord Bone Emperor came for it?" Jian Wushuang stared at Bone Emperor. "Don't misunderstand. I'm not interested in the heaven-sealing scroll in your hands. After all, you're not the only one who has it. I also have one in my hands," Bone Emperor said as he flipped his hand. He immediately took out an ancient scroll that emitted a mysterious aura. Chapter 2899. Purpose looking at the ancient scroll taken out by Bone Emperor, Jian Wushuang's pupils constricted. He was very familiar with this ancient scroll because there were two such scrolls in his interspatial ring. Undoubtedly, what Bone Emperor took out was also a scroll of heaven-sealing painting. The third one. Jian Wushuang immediately became excited. This was normal. As Bone Emperor said, the more heaven-sealing painting scrolls there were, the more benefits he would get. During this time, his comprehension of sword principles and rules had improved so quickly. Besides his extraordinary talent, the most important thing was that he had the help of two heaven-sealing painting scrolls. These two heaven-sealing painting scrolls had helped him a lot. Both of them had helped him a lot. As for the third one, it was rumored that gathering 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls at once was enough to obtain an extraordinary opportunity. Jian Wushuang was filled with anticipation and curiosity about this opportunity. Now, the third heaven-sealing painting scroll appeared in front of him. Although he was pleasantly surprised, Jian Wushuang remained calm on the surface. I didn't expect Lord Bone Emperor to have a scroll of the heaven-sealing painting, Jian Wushuang said. Why? Are you interested in the scroll? Bone Emperor smiled and said, If you want it, I can give it to you. As you said, the more scrolls you have, the more benefits you will get. I've benefited a lot from the scroll over the years. Now that I have a chance to get the second scroll, I can't miss it. But what are your conditions, Lord Bone Emperor? Jian Wushuang said. He knew that Bone Emperor would not give him the heaven-sealing map scroll for no reason. There must be a price to pay. He was just curious about what kind of request Bone Emperor would make. The heaven-sealing map scroll is of no use to me. Since you need it, I can give it to you now. As for the conditions, I do have one, but it should be a piece of cake for you, Bone Emperor said. Tell me. Jian Wushuang looked at Bone Emperor. Jian Yi, have you heard of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance? Bone Emperor asked directly. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Of course, he had heard of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. He had also heard of the existence of the Heaven-Cleaving Union through St. Crimson Rock. St. Crimson Rock had given him a heaven-cleaving token back then. Now, the Bone Emperor had mentioned the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance to him. You should know about it. If I'm not mistaken, it must have been the Crimson Rock Saint who told you about it, right? Bone Emperor looked at Jian Wushuang. How do you know about it, Bone Emperor? Jian Wushuang frowned. Of course, I knew it long ago. Not only does Crimson Rock have a heaven-sealing map scroll, but he also obtained a heaven-cleaving token by chance. Because he came to me with this token, he wanted to give it to me in exchange for what he needed. Unfortunately, I didn't agree, Bone Emperor said. Why? Is it because St. Crimson Rock's requirements are too high, or are you not interested in the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, Lord Bone Emperor? Jian Wushuang asked. The Heaven-Cleaving Alliance was a giant. Although the conditions for joining were extremely harsh, it would definitely bring many benefits. In the divine beginning realm, many powerful experts yearned to join the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. However, Lord Bone Emperor was so powerful that if he could get a Heaven-Cleaving token, he could definitely try to enter the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. After hearing Jian Wushuang's words, the Bone Emperor gave a mischievous smile. It's not that St. Crimson Rock is too demanding, nor that I'm not interested in the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. It's because when St. Crimson Rock gave me the Heaven-Cleaving token, I was already an Earth-level member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. What? Jian Wushuang was shocked, but then he understood. No wonder the Bone Emperor rejected St. Crimson Rock. It turned out that he had been a member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance for a long time. Since he had joined the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, why did he need the Heaven-Cleaving token? The Heaven-Cleaving Alliance is indeed an unfathomable force. Its strength is far beyond the imagination of ordinary experts. Even now, I only have a glimpse of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. But one thing is that after joining the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, I have indeed gained great benefits. Even if I can perfectly control the immortal body and impress the current level, it has something to do with the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. Bone Emperor sighed. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He yearned for the mysterious and powerful Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. Jian Yi, do you also have the Heaven-Cleaving token? Bone Emperor asked. Yes, I do. Jian Wushuang did not deny it. The Bone Emperor smiled. Saint Crimson Rock should have told you about the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. You are very talented, and you have the Heaven-Cleaving token. If you want to join the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, it should be easy. It should be difficult for you to pass the test. Maybe. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. He had heard from St. Crimson Rock that the minimum requirement of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance was Divine Master. Moreover, it was an invincible Divine Master who was extremely strong and had already reached the top. In other words, Invincible Divine Master was only qualified to accept the assessment, but whether he could pass the assessment and become a member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance was still uncertain. However, with his strength, if he accepted the assessment as the Invincible Divine Master, he would have at least a 90% chance of making a breakthrough. After all, he could kill the Immortal Saint directly. If such a heaven-defying Divine Master could not pass the assessment, who else could? Jian Yi, I want to know, will you use the Heaven-Cleaving token to participate in the assessment of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance in the future? Bone Emperor asked. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded decisively. Then he looked at the Bone Emperor and asked, Lord Bone Emperor, is your condition related to the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance? Yes. The Bone Emperor nodded with a smile on his face. My condition is actually very simple. When you accept the assessment, you must admit that you were recommended by me to the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. That's simple. Jian Wushuang was stunned. Just admit that you were recommended by the Bone Emperor. And that was it? The Bone Emperor's condition was indeed a little too simple. Lord Bone Emperor, as a member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, do you also receive rewards or rewards for introducing a new member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance? Jian Wushuang asked. Chapter 2900. Rewards, of course, there are rewards. Moreover, there are quite a lot of rewards, the Bone Emperor explained with a smile. There are a total of 3 ways to obtain benefits in the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. The first one is to carry out the different levels of missions issued by the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. Most of these missions are richly rewarded. These rewards are far more than the rewards given by some of the employment organizations in the absolute beginning divine realm. Unfortunately, however, most of these missions are incomparably difficult. Moreover, the chances of failure or even death are extremely high. I have been an Earth-level member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance for a long time, but I have only accepted 3 Earth-level missions in the past few years. Each of these 3 Earth-level missions required me to go through life and death, and I was lucky enough to complete 2 of them. As for the 3rd mission, I didn't complete it at all, but I was lucky enough to save my life. However, because of the lingering fear, I haven't accepted any Earth-level missions until now. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. To get a sufficient reward, he had to pay more. Since the rewards of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance's missions were so great, the difficulty was naturally higher. The second way to get benefits depends on luck. The Bone Emperor smiled, slightly. The divine beginning realm is very big and vast, far beyond our imagination. As one of the most mysterious alliances in the divine beginning realm, the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance also has various conflicts of interests. Moreover, the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance often encounters some unexpected incidents. Once there are unexpected incidents, the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance can't mobilize other experts to rush over in a short time, so they can only send nearby Heaven-Cleaving Alliance members. In such an emergency, the members who are temporarily dispatched will receive more benefits than those who complete difficult tasks. If they are lucky, such an emergency can be easily solved without too much trouble. Many members of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance know about this, so they hope that an emergency will occur in their territory, and the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance will take the initiative to find them. There is a rumor in the outside world that the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance can gather at least 3 immortal saints in any territory or corner of the divine, beginning world, as long as the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance gives the order. It's true. Jian Wushuang was secretly amazed. The absolute beginning divine realm was vast and had countless territories. The Golden Crow 9 realms was probably just a drop in the ocean compared to the entire beginning divine realm. However, in so many territories, the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance was able to take care of at least 3 immortal saints in the shortest time in any corner. This ability was probably unparalleled in the entire absolute beginning divine realm. However, the reason why the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance was able to make these immortal saints arrive at the fastest time was that they had paid a huge price. Other than these 2 channels, there is one last way to obtain benefits from the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. That is to introduce other experts to join the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. As long as this person passes the test of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance and becomes a member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, the person who introduces him will receive a certain reward. This is the safest way. You don't have to take any risks. As long as you have a unique vision and the person who recommended you is really capable, it will be fine, the Bone Emperor said. This method is indeed weak, but if you only recommended one person to join the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, the reward should not be too much. How can it be worth a heaven-sealing painting scroll? Jian Wushuang asked. Haha, if it's just an ordinary genius, it's not worth it, but you are different. The Bone Emperor smiled. Jian, you may not know this, but there are different levels of members of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. First, there are the most common members. These ordinary members are almost made up of invincible divine masters who have passed the assessment, including some immortal saints who are of average strength. Second, there are Earth-rank members. Like me, I am an Earth-rank member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. In the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, Earth-rank members are very common, but they more or less have a certain level of strength. Above the Earth rank is the Heaven rank. Cultivators at this level almost all have an immortal body, and they have special methods. They are very powerful immortal saints. Even I am unable to reach this level now. After all, I have only completed 2 Earth rank missions alone. Only after I have completed all 3 Earth rank missions can I truly become a Heaven rank member. Above the Heaven rank, there is the Emperor rank. The Emperor rank members are made up of a group of top experts. Most of them are top-notch immortal saints, and some of them are invincible among the immortal saints. It is said that there are even a few rule masters who are also Emperor rank members. At this level, they are also true experts in the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance and can definitely command a side. However, whether it's the Earth, Heaven, or Emperor level, they are just the periphery of the Heaven-Cleaving Union. The Heaven-Cleaving Alliance has no restrictions on them. They are completely free regardless of their strength. However, it is rumored that there is a primitive level above the Emperor level, which is the true core level of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. Any one of them has the strength and means to destroy the world. And because of the existence of a group of primitive experts, the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance is so powerful in the divine beginning world. Jian Wushuang listened carefully. Although he had heard Saint Crimson Rock mention the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, he did not know much about it. As a member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, the Bone Emperor knew more about it. Jian Wushuang did not know about the ordinary, earth, heaven, emperor, and core primitive level. He did not know about it until Bone Emperor said so. Jian Yi, you are only a divine master now. If you use the Heaven-Cleaving token to participate in the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance's assessment, even if you pass the assessment, you will only be an ordinary member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. Such a reward is indeed not much. It is not worth exchanging a heaven-sealing scroll for. But what I value is your great potential. Bone Emperor looked at Jian Wushuang. In the Dragon Phoenix Sacred City, I saw the battle between you and the 3 Realm Masters. Your ability, your swordsmanship, and even your treasures far exceed that of a divine master. Such strength is more than enough for you to become an ordinary member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance. If you are lucky, you can become an Earth-level member of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance at the Divine Master level. Once you become an Earth-rank member, the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance will reward me even more. In other words, the higher your rank is in the future, the more benefits I will get. Chapter 2901. 3 Heaven-Sealing Paintings. Jian Yi, I have high hopes for you. With your strength, as long as you break through to become an undying sage in the future, becoming a Heaven grade member is almost guaranteed. As for becoming an Emperor grade member, you also have a high chance of becoming one. Even the legendary Primordial grade, which belongs to the core of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, you still have some hope. For me, as long as you can become a Heaven-level member, the reward given by the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance is probably more valuable than a Heaven-Sealing painting scroll. If you become an Emperor-level member, I will get more benefits. Because of this, I am willing to give you the Heaven-Sealing painting scroll. I only hope that you can accept the test of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance in the name of my recommendation. The Bone Emperor said. Is that so? Jian Wushuang understood. He also completely understood the Bone Emperor's purpose. To put it bluntly, this Bone Emperor was also for profit. He valued his talent and believed that he could become a Heaven-level member, or even an Emperor-level member, or even a legendary original-level member in the future. Of course, by then, he would be able to obtain even greater benefits. That was why he was willing to take out the Heaven-Sealing painting scroll to borrow his name. Jian Yi, this is a piece of cake for you, but it's very important to me. Are you willing to accept it? The Bone Emperor looked at him. Okay, I'll accept it. Jian Wushuang nodded directly. He did not hesitate at all, and there was indeed nothing to hesitate about. It was just a name. It did not matter to him whether there was a referral or not. However, since the referral would benefit the Bone Emperor greatly, and the Bone Emperor had offered the seal, the Heaven Scroll, as a reward, he would naturally give the Bone Emperor face. Moreover, the seal, the Heaven Scroll, in the Bone Emperor's hand promised him. Haha, that's great. Seeing Jian Wushuang agree, the Bone Emperor immediately smiled. He waved his hand and immediately threw the ancient scroll toward Jian Wushuang. You're giving me the scroll of Heaven-Sealing painting now. Aren't you worried that it'll go back on my word? Jian Wushuang took the scroll and looked at the Bone Emperor in surprise. Of course not. I believe you want to offend me for something that's easy for you, the Bone Emperor said with a cold laugh. Indeed. Jian Wushuang nodded. Jian Yi, since you've received my seal the Heaven painting scroll, the agreement between us will be fulfilled. But when will you accept the test of the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance? The Bone Emperor asked. No rush. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. I have an even more important matter to deal with in the Golden Crow 9 realms. I'll go to the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance after I've dealt with this matter and have a real result. There's nothing to be reluctant about in the Golden Crow 9 realms. Well, as soon as possible. I can see that your aura is extremely powerful. It's at the pinnacle of the Divine Master level. You'd better pass the Heaven-Slaying Alliance's test before you break through to the Immortal Saint level. It'll be easier this way. If you pass the test after you break through to the Immortal Saint level, your test will be even more difficult, the Bone Emperor said. I understand. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. This is my message token. When you decide to accept the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance's test, send a message to me. I will arrange it for you, the Bone Emperor said. Jian Wushuang took the message token and nodded slightly. Lord Bone Emperor, I wonder if the Heavenly Curve World. The Bone Emperor smiled, strangely. You killed the Lord of Heavenly Curve World. It's your own ability to replace him. Who dares to gossip in the Golden Crow 9 realms? As for the agreement between me and the other forces, it only stipulates that masters and saints of one world are not allowed to enter other realms to participate in the competition. However, this agreement doesn't restrict divine masters. Whatever you want to do is your business. I won't interfere, the Bone Emperor said. In that case, thank you, Lord Bone Emperor, Jian Wushuang said gratefully, then turned around and left. After leaving the Bone Emperor castle, Jian Wushuang did not leave the Bone Emperor realm immediately. Instead, he found a remote place in the Bone Emperor realm and opened an independent cave mansion. In the cave mansion, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged with excitement and anticipation in his eyes. In front of him, 3 ancient scrolls that looked and had the same aura were floating quietly. These 3 scrolls were all heaven-sealing scrolls. Bone Emperor knows that I once obtained a heaven-sealing scroll from St. Crimson Rock, but he doesn't know that I found the second heaven-sealing scroll a long time ago. In addition to the one he gave me, I now have 3 heaven-sealing scrolls in my hands. 3. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists. There were rumors about the heaven-sealing painting scroll in the absolute beginning divine realm. As long as he could gather 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls at the same time, he would be able to obtain an extraordinary opportunity. This rumor had always been just a rumor. No one knew whether it was true or not. After all, the absolute beginning divine realm was too big, and there were only dozens of heaven-sealing painting scrolls. Moreover, they had been scattered a long time ago. They were scattered in every corner of every territory. It was impossible for others to find one, but it was difficult to find 3 at once. However, Jian Wushuang had found them now. I don't know whether the rumor is true or not. I hope it's true, but I don't know what kind of opportunity one can get from the 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls, Jian Wushuang murmured. On the other hand, he had already opened the 3 heaven-sealing paintings. The 3 heaven-sealing paintings were exactly the same. Not only did they look the same, but what was recorded in the paintings was also the same. It was a vast and boundless dark starry sky. The dark starry sky contained endless mysteries of heaven and earth. For a long time, Jian Wushuang had relied on those mysteries to cultivate. Now, as the 3 heaven-sealing scrolls were opened at the same time, a strange phenomenon immediately arose. The 3 heaven-sealing scrolls emitted a bright light, which was extremely dazzling and contained an extremely ancient aura. Jian Wushuang sat there, with his legs crossed. He did not move, nor did he have any guidance. However, the 3 heaven-sealing scrolls in front of him had already begun to close up. Soon, Jian Wushuang found that the 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls were merging with each other. Yes, merging. Each of the 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls was a vast and boundless dark void. But now, the 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls had naturally merged into a new painting scroll. A strange power was immediately guided over. Chapter 2902, Divine Palace of Heaven and Earth in the Cave Mansion. Jian Wushuang was still sitting cross-legged, but with the guidance of the power. Rumble, Jian Wushuang. felt that the scene in front of him immediately began to change. Heaven and earth changed, and in the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang had arrived in a hazy void. This void was surrounded by countless strange air currents. Each of these air currents contained extremely pure power. If Jian Wushuang was not mistaken, this air current was the qi of chaos. This feeling, Jian Wushuang's expression changed slightly. He had encountered the same thing before. They were both sitting cross-legged, but they were all brought to a special space because of a treasure. Last time, he had obtained a mysterious golden stone, which led him to a huge temple gate, which led to the space-time temple gate. After crossing the gate, Jian Wushuang learned the space-time divine skill there. For example, the heaven designating skill was the first move of the space-time divine skill. Since he had mastered this move, it had helped him countless times. And now the same heaven and earth transformation was happening. The only difference was that the heaven ceiling painting had brought him to this primal chaos void. What appeared in front of him was a majestic and beautiful divine palace. This divine palace was resplendent, and its size was incomparably huge. It was extremely majestic. Above the door of the divine palace, there were 3 words, heaven and earth, on the plaque. These 2 words were extremely mysterious. The sky was white, and the earth was black. Heaven and earth. What a domineering word. The sky is white, the earth is black, and it also represents yin and yang. Moreover, these 2 words clearly contain a special magic power. I'm too weak to sense anything, but if some truly top-notch existences were here, I'm afraid they would be able to see many things from these 2 words. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. After a while, he slowly walked toward the divine palace. When he reached the gate of the divine palace, the gate in front of him opened, revealing a gray void. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang continued to step through the gate. He stepped into the divine palace. Once he entered the divine palace of heaven and earth, the gate closed again. Jian Wushuang was completely in a gray void. There was no material existence in this void, and even soul power was completely isolated. Jian Wushuang had no idea what was in this place, but at this moment, a mere divine master could get 3 heaven ceiling maps to come to the divine palace of heaven and earth. Kid, you're really lucky. An old voice suddenly sounded from all directions. Jian Wushuang could not tell which direction it came from. Who is it? Jian Wushuang immediately looked around, but he did not see anyone. Kid, listen, I am the spirit of the divine palace. According to the rules, since you have found 3 heaven ceiling maps and come to the divine palace, you can sleep in the divine palace for a year. After a year, you can leave, the old voice said. Sleep for a year. Jian Wushuang was stunned. This was the opportunity in the divine palace. Kid, you don't need to know too much. Just follow the rules. Now, you better go to sleep, the old voice said. However, the voice came toward Jian Wushuang with an extraordinary power. Hearing the voice, Jian Wushuang immediately fell asleep. How could it be? Jian Wushuang was shocked. He did not know what kind of power was contained in the old voice. Yet, even with his state of mind, he could not resist it. But soon, Jian Wushuang's consciousness fell into a deep sleep. Jian Wushuang fell asleep. However, in his deep sleep, even he did not know that his comprehension of the 2 rules of space-time and reincarnation had begun to accelerate. This comprehension speed was much faster than when he calmed his mind and used the 2 heaven ceiling scrolls to comprehend. It was even incomparable. The point was that this kind of comprehension was carried out naturally and could not be stopped by external forces. Jian Wushuang's consciousness was completely asleep, so he did not know this at all. It should be known that Jian Wushuang's comprehension of space-time rules and reincarnation had reached the limit of divine master. But On the other hand, he was also infinitely close to the level of immortal saint and even half a step away. Now, in his deep sleep, his comprehension of the space-time rule and the samsara rule was much faster than usual. With this comprehension, his comprehension of the two rules gradually approached the level of the immortal saint. Time gradually passed. Jian Wushuang fell into a deep sleep and did not know how much time had passed in the outside world. Finally, "It's time, wake up." The old voice spoke again, still coming from all directions. The voice was like a bolt from the blue, instantly waking up Jian Wushuang, who had fallen into a deep sleep. Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes. When Jian Wushuang woke up, he was still a little confused and had not completely understood the situation in front of him. But when he saw the gray void around him clearly, he immediately understood. "I should have fallen asleep just now. How long did I sleep? A year?" Jian Wushuang frowned. "Baby, you seem to be very talented. You must have made a lot of progress during the year you slept. Take a good look." The old voice sounded again. Jian Wushuang immediately began to investigate his changes. His pupils suddenly shrank. "Rules, the rules I've comprehended." Jian Wushuang's body trembled. He raised his right hand, and a large amount of the power of the rules of time and space gathered in his hand. Then he waved his hand. Whoosh! Immediately, nearly 400 powerful space-time blades swept out. Each of these space-time blades was extremely sharp and contained an astonishing killing power. Nearly 400. This is the level of an immortal saint. My comprehension of the space-time rule has broken through. Jian Wushuang was stunned, but he quickly understood. The divine palace of heaven and earth is the opportunity contained in the divine palace of heaven and earth. It was a great opportunity that I obtained during the year I was asleep that allowed me to directly break through my comprehension of the space-time rule and truly reach the level of the immortal saint. Moreover, not only the space-time rule, but also the reincarnation rule seems to be the same. Jian Wushuang's eyes were shining brightly. After making clear his current comprehension of the space-time rule, he began to try to condense the power of the reincarnation rule. Chapter 2903. Storm as expected, his comprehension of the reincarnation rules had also reached the level of the immortal saint. In just 1 year, my comprehension of the space-time and reincarnation rules has broken through. Jian Wushuang was a little confused and in disbelief. At this time, the old voice sounded again. "You only have 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls and can only stay in the divine palace for a year. But if you have the chance to get more heaven-sealing painting scrolls in the future, such as 6, you will have a greater opportunity." Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. It was hard to get even 1 heaven-sealing painting scroll. He was lucky to be able to get 3. As for finding another way to get 3 or 6 of them, it was probably just wishful thinking. However, the 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls alone were enough for him to get a great opportunity. "Baby, leave." The old voice continued to spread, and the time around Jian Wushuang began to collapse. In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang had escaped from the divine palace of heaven and earth. Jian Wushuang was still sitting cross-legged in the cave mansion, but his eyes were wide open. "Phew!" Jian Wushuang exhaled, but his face was full of surprise and joy. "I've long heard that you can get a great opportunity by gathering 3 heaven-sealing painting scrolls. Now it seems that it's true." Jian Wushuang sighed. "My comprehension of the space-time rule and the samsara rule has already reached a bottleneck. I thought that it would take some time before I could break through the 2 rules. I didn't expect that this opportunity would allow me to break through both rules, and my strength would soar." The strength of the comprehension of rules was crucial to a cultivator. Among the factors that determined the strength of a cultivator, rule comprehension was a very important factor. Previously, whether Jian Wushuang fought with the Black Blood Emperor, who had reached the second stage of Invincible Divine Master, or when he fought with immortal saints such as Realm Lord Tian Chu, he relied on his powerful divine power and his comprehension of sword principle. He also knew all kinds of methods and secret skills. But in terms of rule comprehension, he was always at a disadvantage. This disadvantage was huge. For example, the Black Blood Emperor's comprehension of rules was at the immortal saint level, but Jian Wushuang could not reach it. But now he had finally reached this step, which meant that he could use more rule power, display more powerful swordsmanship and some skills, and his battle strength would certainly increase. In addition, there was another point, which was in the aspect of absolute arts. In the aspect of absolute arts, I have now broken through the 8th move of the space-time sword art, Thousand Square-Shaped Light. This move is only an ultimate skill at the level of a divine master. Moreover, it's not the best among the ultimate skills at the level of a divine master. For me now, this move is far from enough. Jian Wushuang thought the ultimate move that he created was a great killing weapon in his hands, and it was also very important. When two cultivators were fighting, many times the ultimate move that he created could decide the outcome or even life and death in the end. As for the ultimate move, after Jian Wushuang made a breakthrough in his sword principle and nurtured the boundless sword tree, he wanted to try to create a stronger ultimate move, but unfortunately his comprehension of the rules was too weak, which made him feel powerless to attack. But now it was different. Now, my comprehension of the space-time rules and the samsara rules has reached the level of the immortal saint. The samsara sword formation exists in the samsara rules. If I use the immortal saint's comprehension of the rules to perform the samsara sword formation, I should be able to barely perform the 4th samsara sword formation. I don't need to worry about the samsara rules for now, but in terms of the space-time rules, I urgently need to create the 9th move of the space-time sword art. This move must be an absolute art at the level of a saint, and its power must not be too low. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. After making the decision, Jian Wushuang did not delay any further. He began to try to create new swordsmanship in the cave mansion. An absolute art at the saint level could only be created by reaching the immortal saint level in the comprehension of sword principle and rules. Jian Wushuang had already reached these two requirements. Most importantly, his comprehension was very high. With his current ability, it was indeed not difficult for him to create a new sword art. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, another year and 4 months had passed. During this year and 4 months, Jian Wushuang was completely immersed in the study and innovation of sword art. Until now, there was finally a result. In the middle of a vast and desolate world, Jian Wushuang stood there like a statue. He held the Blood Mountain sword tightly in his hand, and his eyes were slightly closed. It was calm. But suddenly, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes. The moment he opened them, a fierce light immediately burst out. A shocking and murderous sword essence directly burst out from Jian Wushuang's body. This sword essence did not burst out because Jian Wushuang guided the supreme sword essence in the Blood Mountain sword. It was just Jian Wushuang's own sword essence. But with his current cultivation of sword principle, the sword essence that burst out with all his strength was also extremely powerful. The sword essence was like a domain, sweeping toward the void in front of him in all directions. And in the center of this world, Jian Wushuang, who stood there like a statue, finally drew his sword. He held the sword with one hand and slowly raised it. Then he drew a line. This line seemed to be an easy one, but in fact, the moment he drew it, Jian Wushuang's own sword essence and the power of the infinite sword tree in his body had been exerted to the extreme. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A large number of space-time rules condensed with the sword essence, time and space blades condensed one after another. There were more than 400 densely packed time and space blades, and these time and space blades had completely fused with the sword essence. The space-time rules and sword skills were perfectly combined. Boom! A fierce wind suddenly swept up between heaven and earth. A huge storm rose out of thin air in the void, where Jian Wushuang's sword essence was directed. This storm contained more than 400 space-time blades and endless shocking sword essence. It was terrifying. As the storm swept away, everything was crushed to pieces. Jian Wushuang was still standing in the void, staring at the wanton storm ahead. Although a certain distance separated them, Jian Wushuang could still feel that the power of the storm was terrifying. He could guarantee that even if some ordinary immortal saints were caught in the storm, they would be crushed by the storm in an instant if their protective abilities were mediocre. And the name of this sword was Storm. Chapter 2904, Paying a Visit. This move of mine is quite powerful among the absolute arts at the saint level. If I use it with all my strength, its power will be even more terrifying. It should be enough for me to use in a short time. Jian Wushuang thought. Thus, the 9th move of the space-time swordsmanship, Storm, was born. My strength has reached a peak in a short period of time. If I want to improve further, I have to find a way to get a large number of sacred elixirs to break through to the peak Great Divine Master level. However, I need too many sacred elixirs to break through in a short period of time. However, even if I haven't broken through to the peak Great Divine Master level, my battle strength is still much stronger than before. In the entire 9 realms of the Golden Crow, there should be no one who is my match except for the Supreme Lord Bone Emperor. With such strength in hand, I can handle everything. Next, it's time for me to visit the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Jian Wushuang's eyes sparkled. While he was sleeping in the divine palace of heaven and earth, the Sword Alliance had begun to move toward the heavenly curve world. Now that they had arrived in the heavenly curve world and had completely stabilized, the Sword Alliance had become the new overlord of the heavenly curve world. Now that the Sword Alliance had settled down, he had nothing to worry about. There was only one reason for him to stay in the Golden Crow 9 world, and that was Long Wushuang. Through the spatial passage, Jian Wushuang soon arrived at the Dragon Phoenix Sacred City and arrived at the mountain gate of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion again. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang landed directly in front of the mountain gate. Several experts of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion guarding the mountain gate immediately surrounded Jian Wushuang. "Who are you?" One of them asked in a deep voice. "Please go in and tell them that Jian Yi, the master of Heavenly Curve World, is here to pay a visit," Jian Wushuang said indifferently. "Jian Yi." When the experts of Dragon Phoenix Pavilion heard the name, their expressions changed, and 2 of them were trembling with fear. Their attitude immediately became respectful and humble. "Lord, please wait for a moment. I will immediately report this." A violet-robed lady immediately went in to report. Within the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, the current pavilion master of the pavilion, Long Xingzi, was currently sitting cross-legged, discussing with a red-haired old man. At this moment, an upper echelon of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion walked in and respectfully reported, "Pavilion Master, there's a person outside. He calls himself the Tianchu Realm Lord, Jian Yi, and is here to pay a visit." Jian Yi. Long Xingzi was stunned. It's that Jian Yi who killed the original Tianchu Realm Lord, Elder Su? The red-haired old man revealed an astonished expression. It should be him. After the original Tianchu Realm Lord died, Jian Yi used lightning techniques to occupy the Tianchu realm. Right now, he's the most respected person in the Tianchu realm. I wonder why Jian Yi came to our Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. and it has to be at this time. Long Xingzi frowned. No matter what, he is a guest. Furthermore, Jian, he didn't have any enmity with our Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Since he came to visit us personally, our Dragon Phoenix Pavilion naturally has to treat him with respect. How about this? I will personally receive him and ask him why he is here. If it's possible, I will send him away. The red-haired old man said, Okay, you can go. Long Xingzi nodded slightly. Jian Wushuang stood in front of the gate of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and waited quietly. The cultivators of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion looked at him in awe. Jian Wushuang was now very famous in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. He was a supreme genius who could easily kill an immortal saint as a divine master. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was known as the #1 genius concentration camp in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. However, no one in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, except for the young phoenix, could compare to Jian Wushuang. Whoosh! The red-haired elder rushed over from afar and soon appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Ha! Mr. Jian, he actually came to visit the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion in person. It's a great honor for the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, the red-haired elder said with a smile. He first complimented Jian Wushuang and then introduced himself. I'm Chu Yong, an elder of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Elder Chu Yong. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Jian Wushuang had heard of Elder Chu Yong. Among the 3 known immortal saints of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, Chu Yong was one of them. Moreover, Chu Yong's strength was quite impressive among the immortal saints. He should not be weaker than the master of the heavenly curve world, who was killed by Jian Wushuang. My pavilion master has something important to deal with today, so he can't come to greet you personally. So I have to do it for you. Mr. Jian, please come in, Chu Yong said with a smile. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate and followed Chu Yong to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. It was his 2nd time in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, so he was not unfamiliar with the environment here. Under the guidance of Chu Yong, Jian Wushuang soon arrived at a magnificent hall. Chu Yong ordered people to serve good wine and food, and then the two began to talk. Mr. Jian, what brings you to our Dragon Phoenix Pavilion today? Chu Yong asked directly. I'm here to greet you all. I'm now the new realm master of the Heavenly Curve world, and the Heavenly Curve world is one of the most powerful realms in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. As a realm master, I will certainly have dealings with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion in the future. If anything happens, I hope you can give me some face and be lenient, Jian Wushuang said. That's easy. Chu Yong smiled. Although the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is one of the 4 pavilions, we have never had any conflict of interest with the Heavenly Curve world. In the future, even if there is, we will take the initiative to negotiate with you, Mr. Jian. After all, anything can be discussed. Thank you. Jian Wushuang smiled. In addition, there is another thing. When the Dragon Phoenix list was opened last time, experts from all forces were invited to Dragon Phoenix Pavilion to attend the ceremony. I was there and I saw the young phoenix. To be honest, I was tempted by the young phoenix at first sight. However, I couldn't say anything in front of so many people. This time, I came to visit because I want to see the young phoenix again and have a good talk with her. Is that possible? Mr. Jian, he wants to see Xiaofeng? Chu Yong looked at Jian Wushuang in astonishment. He did not expect Jian Wushuang to come here especially for Xiaofeng. He admitted that Xiaofeng's beauty and temperament were unparalleled in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. However, she had reached the level of the immortal saint, so she should be able to resist her beauty. However, looking at Jian Wushuang, he seemed to have been completely captivated by young phoenix.